So it's 7:33. I'll call the meeting to order. And we'll open up with citizen comments. I know Natalie said there was at least one that we got in advance. Is that correct?
Yeah, Catherine Egan was going to speak for citizen comment, but I'm not sure she's logged on yet. She just messaged me and said she was on her way. So I think if there's anybody else that wanted to speak, it'd probably be fine.
Okay, so I think the way we've done it in the past is that people can just write into the chat on Zoom. And just what are they doing, Natalie? Writing their name if they want to speak?
Since we have a larger crowd, there's Catherine. Since we have a larger crowd tonight, if you just write into the chat box that you want to say something, I'll take you off mute, and then you can just speak. Oh, okay. Juan and Danielle would like to speak.
Okay, you guys can go ahead. And you, I think, Natalie, did you say you unmute them?
I just did.
Okay.
Can everyone hear us all right?
Yeah. Yes, and before you begin, I just want to remind, or if anyone's new to our meetings, we ask that you try to keep your comments to 3 minutes as a maximum. But as of now, you've got the floor.
Great. My name is Juan. I live right across from the main Ridgeville Park. We've been here in our house, I think, like 13 years. We have kids at Oakton, and I'm a skateboarder, and my kids skateboard. I recently, last year, started a before-school skateboard club at Oakton, and I had more kids than I could actually easily supervise. I had to cut the number off at 20, and this was for 2nd through 5th graders, and it was really cool to see everyone excited about it. Then, like this summer, I saw that in going over to the court next to the basketball court, I saw that some local high schoolers had brought some ramps. I've always gone with my kids to ride our bikes around or ride our skateboards there. And I thought that, it was really awesome that the local kids have taken the initiative to do that. I think it'd be great if Ridgeville gave them permission to continue and also look into possibly doing a permanent skate park. I have a good friend who works for Spawn Ranch who has proposed, put together a proposal for Evanston in the past. And they've talking to him, there are some cheap options to do modular drop-in concrete obstacles that would be permanent. And I think that's something that the Ridgeville board should consider, because I think there's a lot of kids in the neighborhood who would really use it. And I think it'd be great for the community. Oh. And I don't.
Yeah, I want to talk too. So, I want to just sort of talk a little bit as a non-skateboarder. So I'll say that up front that I, and also the house that we are, when he said we live across from Ridgeville, we're the house on the corner of Ridge and South. We have the garden for the yard and now the chicken coop. So that, people who live in the area know who we are from the house. So up front, I just want to say one, I'm not a skateboarder. I tried it a couple times when we were dating. Once we got engaged, I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not coordinated. I'm not good at any sport. So it's not personally for myself that I'm into skateboarding, but I have, and also I should also say that even before I met Juan, I always thought skateboarding was cool. So I'm not somebody who ever had an aversion to the sport. Just for personally, it's not for me. And so, I will say I'm biased. I'm biased in favor of skateboarding. I arrived in the relationship biased in favor of skateboarding, even though I'm not a skateboarder myself. I was really excited last year for the skate club. The kids were really excited about it. It's a shame that Evanston doesn't have a skate park, both because, young people can't drive themselves places like people like my husband and his friends can. There are a lot of neighboring communities that have skate parks. And so I was really, it was a couple of weeks ago, 2 of the kids from skate club rang our doorbell at lunchtime and said, hey, can the kids and Juan go down and skateboard with us next to the basketball court, and they needed Juan to go because they aren't allowed to cross Ridge by themselves without a grown up. And so I just was really, I just loved that was there for them, and that I think that having something that is more permanent would be fabulous. It's a space that's already, you know, kind of like a high travel area. So I don't think you'd have complaints like you might if you put it like literally in someone's backyard. There's already other community stuff that's going on there in terms of disruption to neighbors. The surface does need to be repaved. I mean, there are a lot of cracks. It's not exactly safe in its current state because you can kind of get caught up on the cracks. I also have seen rollerbladers there. I know that roller skaters are also interested in it. If you could paint the same things that you have on it now if you want to preserve the 4-square court. And still have other obstacles around for skateboarders. And I want to say that because I've been married to Juan for however many years it's been, and with him for so long, that I've really gotten to know the skateboard community. And that's like, I mean, we have like most of his friends are skateboarders. There's like kind of this image of who is a skateboarder. And I just want to say, like, it's not just like young punk kids. It's really a cross section of the community. There are, and I mean, it's a really diverse and inclusive group too. So you might not realize, like, you know, there are adults who skateboard, like full-on grown-ups in their 40s and 50s who still do it. There are certainly artists and musicians, but there are financial planners, there are doctors, there are physicists, there are all kinds of people. And these are just like my husband's friends who skateboard. Skateboarders are Asian, they're Latinx, they're white, they're black. It just cuts all races, they're young kids, they're teens. I think that it's a shame Evanston doesn't already have something. I know that there have been efforts over the years to try it. You know, it's just I just want to say that it's like a really good sport, and I would be really thrilled if Ridgeville would be supportive of doing something to encourage what's already kind of popped up. That's all.
Thank you.
Okay, Natalie, that's new, that I can't unmute myself. Did you know that it's working that way?
Yeah, I'm gonna fix that.
Okay. Sorry, everybody. I started to talk and I was saying thank you so much for speaking, but I don't know if you heard me because I don't think I was unmuted yet. We did know in advance that Catherine Egan wanted to speak at Citizen Comment, and she is here now. So she will be next, but I just want to reiterate what I said previously, which is that anyone who'd like to speak at Citizen Comment, please just enter your name into the chat. And if you don't know where the chat is or how to do that, can you raise your hand right now so that I can give more details on that? And there are a lot of people whose screens I don't see, but Rob Beatty, I see you. Natalie, do you mind unmuting him so that he can speak?
I've set it so everyone can unmute themselves.
Oh, you did? Okay, so Rob, did you hear that? You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, do I have to put my name down? I'm just gonna type my name in, or?
Yeah, just your name, because that shows up. That'll help us create an order of when people want to speak.
Okay, great.
Also, just record that people want to speak, because I'm not going to assume that everyone here is speaking necessarily. So Rob, you'll be after Catherine, and so we'll go to Catherine next. So you've got the floor, Catherine.
Thank you so much, Martha. So some of you all know, this year, we at Ridgeville launched a professional skills development program for Evanston teens. So we teach Evanston teens employment and life skills while growing healthy food and donating it to the food pantry and beautifying Ridgeville's parks even further by planting pollinator plants. And in a nutshell, I'm going to give you the skinny right up top. Now that our 10-week summer employment program is over with the teens as of tomorrow, we really need volunteers from the community to come on out and help us keep harvesting and donating to the food pantry through the end of the season. We're also going to plant some additional pollinator plants. So if you are interested in hanging out in the garden, getting some fresh air, we have masks on and stay 6 feet apart, and have plenty of hand sanitizer, please contact me or contact Natalie, and we would love to hook you up with that. I would love to have you there and, engage more folks from the community to help us build this program as we launch into our second year and try to really make it an institutionalized and successful program here at Ridgeville. So Matt kindly asked me to say a little bit more in depth about the program, and I would love to do that. So to place our program in context, schools and organizations around the country are using urban agriculture to teach kids employment skills, life skills, entrepreneurship skills, because it is a uniquely powerful tool that can be used to teach any skill. And so we have programs all over the country with these proven models of very, very successful, starting going all the way back to the 90s. But here in Evanston, we of course have Talking Farm, ETHS, YOU that do this work, this kind of program. And then of course in Chicago, we have several programs, including the Chicago Botanic Garden, Chicago Lights Urban Farm, and Gary Comer Youth Center. So for me, I have started and run, helped run this type of program. This is my third one now, because empowering youth with professional skills that will serve them for the rest of their lives, regardless of which kind of career they choose, whether it's a lawyer or, someone who grows edible urban agriculture, in people's yards, or a restaurant owner. It's a way of helping kids to learn the skills that will help them reach their potential. And I'm really particularly passionate about it because it addresses two of the root causes of inequality in our society. One is access to quality employment and entrepreneurship training, which is not something that's taught in schools, and it's not something that really many of us have access to, especially not at an age when kids are needing those skills and figuring out what their next steps are post high school. Another way that it addresses inequality is, of course, through providing access to the kids in the program to good nutrition through fresh fruits and vegetables, but also to those we donate to through the food pantry to that good nutrition. And that, of course, undergirds all of our performance in employment and life. None of us can really actually perform if we don't have the proper nutrition. So in this program, I actively mentor youth, teens, not just to learn employment and entrepreneurship and life skills, and not just with hands-on urban agriculture training, but also we talk a lot about social justice. For example, today is Black Women's Pay Equality Day, and we talked about that, the fact that women, and even more so Black women, are earning less than your average white man. So we talk about these social justice issues. We talk about how helping to feed our friends and neighbors through the food pantry helps make the American dream actually more accessible for more folks. And then we, of course, this is an ideal program to give kids opportunities to take action on topics that they're passionate about. And so we talk a lot about how their work in urban agriculture reduces food miles and sequesters carbon in the soil and works against climate change. So wrapping up here, the Youth Grow team, like I said, 10 weeks in the summer, we have our kids identify 2 professional skills that they believe will be most important to helping them achieve their life goals. And then they work over the course of 10 weeks with consistent feedback on a regular basis to gain competence in those 2 skills. And I'm just having my exit interviews with the kids these last 2 days, and it is so powerful to see them not only get better at these skills, but be aware of it and be like, wow, I didn't even think about my ability to follow through on tasks or complete tasks or lead a team of my peers to complete a project successfully. And now I'm really feel so much more confident in doing that. And as some of you may have seen when you visited the program, and I hope more of you will visit the program, our kids have spoken publicly about their increased skills in things like time management and public speaking and leading their peers. And of course, as I mentioned, the plan, we need volunteers in the fall. We'll work with them for 10 weeks and in the spring as well. And that way, we can grow throughout the whole season. So we're really looking to involve folks from all walks of the community to help us, again, make this program truly successful. This year, we've done quite a few things Plot 15 and Elks Park has been transformed from a weedy mess into a productive garden. And like I said, we've been planting the pollinator plants, and we will do more. And the kids are making it for those pollinator plants to educate our community about the benefits. So to summarize, I think this program has several key benefits for Ridgeville. One of them is that it enables Ridgeville to engage teens, which have been historically a little bit harder to engage in programming. And not only that, it's a very diverse group of teens. So 3 out of 7, or 43% of our teens this year were African American, which, to provide a little bit of context, Evanston is about 17% African American. We also have other types of diversity that really strengthen our team this summer, including—
Hey, Catherine, I'm so sorry. Can I jump in? This is Martha, sorry. Just so you know, that's double the amount of time we usually give everybody. And I absolutely want to hear from you. And
Yeah.
I would imagine that everyone does. But if I can ask you to wrap it up, and then I was wondering if instead of just asking people to reach out to volunteer, if we might actually want to set times. It might work better that people can jump into prearranged times, and maybe we can talk more about that. But if anybody is interested, just because we have the technology in this Zoom format, if you are definitely interested in learning more, just go ahead and type that in the chat, because then we can follow up with you that way. And I'll turn it back over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you so much. I apologize. Didn't realize it was that long. Anyway, our goal is to make our team even more diverse next season. And we'll be actively working with the community to recruit even more teens from various different backgrounds. We'll also be hoping that our kids will return year after year to engage in peer mentoring in the program and more leadership opportunities, as well as to sell possibly at the farmers market to practice entrepreneurship skills. Thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you for having me speak, and I really look forward to seeing some of you in the garden.
Thank you so much again, Catherine.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear more about the volunteer opportunities, and I'll be volunteering. I hope to see other people there as well. Okay, and so I'm just checking the chat here. Okay, of course, Rob, you are next.
Hi, everyone. Good evening to the board members. No, it's been a while since I've been a part of this. I just wanted to quickly say that great work, Kathy Egan. I think that was your name. That sounds exciting. I also want to encourage the board and thank the board for doing some equity work. I hear that you're taking part in some courses and trying to work that through. So that's great news. The last thing I want to talk about is just the encouragement for the skate spot. As you know, that was something that the city of Evanston brought to us some years ago and was trying to get us to kind of collaborate. And we were, we were a little reticent at the moment. I think Dan and I were pretty charged up about it and excited. But it's nice to see Luke and Juan and his wife. I'm sorry, I forget her name. And I actually talking about the skate spot. So I just want to encourage the board to really take this under great consideration. There's so many different ways of doing it. You can go with a prefabbed park that's, kind of on the expensive side. I think it's anywhere from 40 to 60 grand these days. They've got a company out of St. Louis, and Juan, probably expert more than I am, knows about that. But there's also, much more, cost-effective ways to do it too. And that's just adding things to that, to really that slab that's already out there. I would encourage the group to look at maybe, smoothing that out or putting a new one down and making that a permanent spot. But whatever I can do to help with that, I know that there's a person in the community that lives in the Evanston community who's a big skater who has some deep pockets that may want to be a part of this as well. And Dan knows that person too. His name is Jeff Scales. So he's still around. And I just encourage it. So I encourage the board to really deliberate with this and it sounds like there's people who want this, who actually skate. The only thing that I'm sorry about is that my son didn't get to enjoy one during his teen years. Now that he doesn't really skate anymore, I guess because we didn't really have anything. So anyway, with that said, this is great news. Keep up the good work, and I'm here to support it. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob. Sorry for the delay. It's 2 separate steps to unmute and unvideo myself, so it takes a little bit there. But thanks so much for speaking. Wow, it looks like the 3 minutes just went off, so you were exactly at 3 minutes. Back to the chat here. I'm pretty sure, unless I'm missing anybody, that somebody named Kobe, am I pronouncing that correctly? You are next, and you've got the floor.
Great. I want to say hi to everybody who is here in support of building a skate spot. Me and my friend Dominic Wade, who's also in the call, we started adding things in the beginning of the summer, just hoping that nobody would take it down so that we had a place to enjoy ourselves. And through that, we've seen the whole community of skateboarders coming together, and like somebody started an Instagram and people are building more ramps in the garages, and everybody just wants to bring things and help out. And it's been really cool to see so many people coming together like that. I think that adding more DIY things can become a little unsafe, and I think that to create a good space where everybody can come to learn and enjoy themselves would be to create a more permanent skate spot and definitely repave the slab, because it is a little sketchy. But also through creating a skate spot, it creates more opportunities for programs in which we can have kids coming and learning how to skateboard, and like Juan already does, but having a legitimate spot where we can bring so many people together would just be really cool for the community. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Kobe. Thanks for saying all of that. It's awesome to hear from so many people who are involved in this coordinated effort, and at a time when we're all having so much trouble doing things and connecting with each other. I just think it's so awesome that that's been going on. Let's see what we have next. I think it's in the chat it says Colin, but actually Jackson.
Okay.
Okay. All right, you guys have the floor.
Thank you. This is Jackson Murphy. He wants to speak.
So I'm 10 years old and I'm going into 5th grade at Oakton. And I know Juan from Skate Club. And so me and my brother were the ones that knocked on their door and asked if we could go to the skate park with them. I've been skating for about 1 year, and what
have you been doing on the weekends?
Every
Northbrook.
weekend for about 4 weekends, I've been going to the Northbrook Skate Park, and it is really fun because a bunch of people go there. There's skateboard. People can use skateboards, bikes, and scooters on it. It's not bikes.
We have limited time.
But so it was really fun, and I do support building a more permanent skate park, and we want that because I don't like driving 20 minutes to a skate park that we can only stay for like 2 or 3 hours. Like I want a skate park that I can go to like every day alone.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
So thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you, Jackson. Just checking out the chat thing here. So I don't see, unless I'm missing something, I don't see anybody in the chat waiting to speak. I'm just gonna give it a second here because if you would like to, we'd love to hear from you. I see there are some people here that I don't usually see who haven't spoken yet. And we also do hold citizen comments at the end of the meeting, which sometimes is late into the night, but anyone is welcome to speak at that point as well. So unless we have any other citizen comments. Oh, Quentin.
Hey, so my name is Quentin, and I fix up and like build some of the stuff there. And I just wanted to give my 2 cents in that, like, I agree with Kobe that it could be kind of a problem with liability, the DIY thing, in favor of like making it more official. The other problem too with like DIY setups is that they're great, but once like, you know, some of us building them like leave for college and stuff, and they're going to be subjected to the rain and snow and hail, they're going to start to break down, which could potentially be an issue if there's no one to keep it in shape, which is what happened about like 15 years ago when there was a similar thing going on at Robert Crown, and they had some pretty major issues there. And that's just due to the nature of the fact that a lot of the DIY stuff is wood and not concrete, so it doesn't really last. And then the other thing I was going to bring up is that a skate park is going to have, like, as far as a monetary thing, can have a lot more like return on investment than a lot of other parks, because, you know, you can run camps and clubs there for kids, and it's cheaper to maintain, like, at least speaking on concrete parks. And then the other thing I was going to say is that, and this was an issue for me personally as a kid, because when I was much younger, I used to skate all the time, and then I quit when I got older because I was too busy. But when I was much younger, my parents worked a lot, so I could never really get rides to skate parks and stuff. So I basically was almost never able to skate anywhere other than like my driveway or just like on like the concrete, like full of cracks and stuff. And so I think that it would be really important to have like a legit skate park here in Evanston, because while there is a ton around here, like there's not that many people under the age of 16 who can just go out and drive to a park. And even for me, once I got older and I was able to drive and had a license, like I couldn't always have the car, that kind of thing. And it kind of sucks to have to drive like, you know, 30 minutes to an hour to get to a reasonable skate park. And then lastly, I just wanted to ask, like, what if a lot of people are on board, like what would be the next steps towards starting like an official skate park?
Thank you, Quentin. And I just want to take the opportunity to remind everyone, just in case you don't know, that with citizen comment, the structure is such that we don't actually answer any questions, we being the board. That's just kind of the way that it works, is that it's a time for people to speak. You can ask questions. It's just not a time that we're in a position to follow up with you directly. But those are great questions to be asking. And you can reach out to any of us as board members and also to staff, the director, et cetera, by finding our contact information on the website. And I encourage everyone who's interested in seeing this happen to follow up with us and talk about it outside of the meeting as the next steps. So I'll just keep moving on then. It looks like Niles is next.
Hi, this is Niles Williams. I live like a block away from Ridgeville Park. I have been skating for multiple years, and I would like to say that it is a positive thing to build this park, because the park is known to have many different activities for many different people. It has activities for athletes, as in the basketball hoops. It does have activities for people in theater. There's a constant flow in and out of the park. Park, and I would like to say that building these ramps would bring in another group and could also help expand, because what I've noticed is that a lot of the people actually co-mingle and they coexist, as in like I will go there to go skateboard, and then some days I'll go there, I'll go hoop, but then I'll also have my board on me and I'll still skateboard. So to kind of keep it short and compact, I feel like building the skate ramps there is one of the best ideas that has come up, because since that park has been, or since they've been bringing in ramps and boxes, that it's really brought out a lot more people that I would normally see, other than people who just play basketball or people who just do theater. It's kind of brought in a whole other thing, and I would like to see more community investment put into it, because it does help bring out more people and it does help get kids to stay active. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you, Niles. And I'll just say, in case anyone isn't seeing in the chat right now, that Natalie had said she has some answers to those questions that have come up so far in her report tonight. And so for anyone who's able to stick around to the point at which Natalie's report would happen, which actually I think, for the sake of how many people are here and in the interest of not making you stay for quite a while, I'm gonna, unless there's any other citizen comments, I'm going to move that we move that part of Natalie's report up the agenda so that she can respond right away and we can get that out of the way. So is there a second for
This
that?
is Coyne, I second. This is
Okay,
Coyne, I
great.
second.
Okay, thanks, Dan. You did digitize a little bit there, but then I heard it after that. All in favor of moving that up the agenda?
So I think we probably should call the meeting to order before we start having motions.
Charlie, I did call the meeting to order before we went into citizen comment.
Okay, then I must have missed that.
Okay. Did I do that only in my head, or did other people hear me do that?
I heard you do that.
Okay. So it sounds like we do need to roll call that vote to move it up the agenda like we always do. So Julie, if you don't mind doing that for us.
Yep. Commissioner Braun? Debbie Braun?
Yes.
Yeah. Coyne?
Yes.
Haynes?
Yes.
McCourt?
Yes.
And Mitchell?
Yes.
You?
Okay, so Natalie, if you want to just do the part that relates to the issues of a skate park, or if you want to do your full report, I'm fine with either way, so I'll leave that up to you.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm having some technical difficulties. So my my camera may or may not turn on when my computer starts responding to what
Okay, I'm not hearing Natalie. Is anybody else hearing Natalie?
No.
No. Okay. Natalie, can
some folks had expressed interest in expanding on that. So he wrote some notes.
Hey, Natalie, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Okay, so we didn't hear you until just now, if you don't mind starting over again.
Okay, you can see me?
Yes, now we can.
Technology is not on my team today. So I was going to say that I'm sorry, that was misleading. It's not actually my report. It was Brian. Brian left some notes. So he had gotten a call either this week or last week from somebody expressing interest in the skate park and to discuss the equipment that had already been brought and left. So I know he had been having conversations with our insurance company, but to answer, I think it was Quentin's question, one of the first things that would need to happen is canvassing the neighborhood. So talking to all the neighbors that live around Ridgeville Park District. And we do that for any kind of large scale project that we do. So it would involve, putting flyers out, reaching out, asking for input, inviting even more neighbors to come to board meetings to talk about that. It sounds like tonight there's a lot of great support. So I think that's awesome. And then something else that he mentioned, and I think this is from the conversations that he's had with our insurance company. The equipment I think it's been recommended that the equipment, should we invest in that, be something that is able to be removed seasonally. And also, for everybody who's also asked or commented on it, part of what's been written into this budget that we will talk about tonight when we get to the budget discussion, we will be, hopefully, assuming that it gets passed, resurfacing both the basketball court and that side court. So that's already in the works. We got that. But the goal also, if we did either move forward on some structures for skating that could be removed or were permanent structures, we would still ideally be able to keep some of the 2 square and 4 square play spaces there as well, so that we can also utilize that during our camp seasons. That was it. Martha, do you want me to do my whole report, or we can come back to that later if you'd like?
I mean, normally we would do it later. I do think that the, the program report is probably relevant to everybody, but you could argue that anything we're covering is relevant to people who tune in for citizen comment. So I think we can do the rest of your report later as we otherwise would, if none of it relates to the skate park.
That's fine. I don't know. It's up to you, of course, but since we're talking about it, I don't know if the board wanted to have discussion about that point now.
Discussion about what? The skate park?
Yeah, and Brian's notes about that.
Okay, so first let's continue with citizen comment, because I see that somebody has a question, and so I'm gonna let Kobe ask his question first here.
I just wanted to ask if being able to push it forward, as in canvassing the neighborhoods, if there's any way that people from the community can come and volunteer and help, because I know a lot of people would want to come and help in any way they possibly can. And I'm definitely one of those people. I would love to be able to help however I can. And I know so is my friend over here. So that's all I wanted to ask.
Okay, so I just want to remind you, because I'm not choosing not to answer your question, but I just want to remind you that citizen comment isn't really a time for us to answer the questions directly, or it's not supposed to be. I would say that, just so everybody knows who's tuned in on this issue, if, of course, any citizen can speak on anything at the beginning and end of our meetings. If you want to move forward with something like this, and see some action relating to something you're interested in of any kind, you can, like I said, follow up with commissioners and staff, and then also request that commissioners add an item to the agenda if, at least one commissioner is in favor of moving forward with something like that. That's the official process for how we would take additional steps instead of just talking about it in citizen comments. So hopefully that makes sense. And early on here, we're hearing from the community, so that's a great first step. But obviously it has to kind of get onto our agenda, which is where we carry out our official business to move forward in some way. And I just broke my own rule by answering your question a little bit there, but there's a lot of people here interested in this, so I'm just trying to be, open with the answers as I have them, at least in real time. I think okay, and in the chat, Natalie did write that you can reach out to her directly. She's got her programs@ridgeville.org email there. She is the program director. I'm just kind of reading what she's written there. So feel free to reach out to her. And I just want to say that I'm absolutely interested in hearing more from all of you and exploring this idea further. I'm kind of curious what the board feels about, I could certainly make a motion to add discussion of this so that we are officially talking about it as of this meeting. We can't take any action on anything because, first of all, we're not really ready for that. But second of all, we can't take any action on something that hasn't been posted on our agenda for the Open Meetings Act. We certainly could discuss it if we have at least a majority vote from the board to discuss it. What I don't know if we would be able to do, so everybody on the board can help me out with this one, is allow the discussion to actually involve people from the community also. I don't think we can. I think they only speak during citizen comment, not in the meeting. I'm seeing some nodding. So I would suggest that another additional step, you guys that are interested in getting a skate park in the works, would be to try to schedule a meeting with us, not necessarily an official open meeting, But if we have more than 2 commissioners there, then it would be an open meeting. We could literally schedule a special meeting to talk about the skate park, which is probably the right way to do it, just so that we don't extend the time of our meeting tonight. But given that you're all here, I think I will go ahead and throw this out there and see how the rest of the board feels about it. I'll make a motion that we add to our agenda a discussion of a skate park involving the things that have been brought up tonight, as well as the things that Natalie just relayed to us from Brian Rosinski.
This is Coyne. I second.
Okay, so we'll go to a roll call vote in terms of adding that to our agenda for tonight, just for discussion only. And if Julie can take the roll call vote for us.
Sorry, Martha. So we're just moving to add that discussion to the agenda tonight.
Yes, and I think that we would normally add something in new business, but again, in the interest of not making everyone stay until the end of the meeting, I would be proposing that we jump into that discussion right away as part of my motion. I just want it to be understood, though, that we're kind of trying to have a really quick discussion of it right now instead of a lengthy one, and we can schedule another meeting later on. But my intention is to just have any feedback that people have right now to what Natalie said, that Brian said. So I'm moving that we add discussion of the skate park and that we have that discussion right away quickly.
Okay. Commissioner Braun?
Okay, you're saying a quick discussion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes. Whatever.
Okay. Point?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
McCourt?
No, and I'd like to add that I don't think we should do this without Brian Rosinski present.
That's a good point.
And Mitchell?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion passes. Natalie, if you want to please highlight those points from Brian again in any way that you would like to engage the community that's here tonight directly, just to kind of figure out maybe any connections right off the bat between what you said Brian has brought to us on this idea, and then where these people who are here tonight can kind of, how they can take that and what they might do next. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm trying to connect those dots.
Yeah, I will say, you know, Pat's right. Brian would love to be a part of this conversation, and has, you know, the conversation of a skate park has come up in the past. So he's done a lot of legwork on this already. So he'll have a lot of information to offer. So, you know, whether we add it to the agenda next month or we do have a special meeting, it'll be, Brian will have a lot, will know a lot more than I have, but here are his notes. So he, and again, I believe this is—
Natalie, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but people have been raising their hands. I just want to remind everybody, if you want to speak, we'll go in the order of how you put your name in the chat, just to keep things organized. And so after Natalie's done, I'm pretty sure we're going to Quentin again, if that was recently added to the chat there. And then Debbie, I saw your hand. I'm pretty sure I saw Matt's, but if you guys can add your names to the chat, that's the official way that we'll go next. And I'll give it back to you, Natalie.
Just to clarify, I think Quentin was just typing his name for Julie Larson for the minutes. Just so you know. Anyway, so, and again, I believe that these notes are based on his conversation that he recently had with our insurance company. But the recommendation, I believe, is what he means, is that the equipment, should we purchase equipment to put in that area, it should be light enough to move so we can remove it seasonally. He also wrote a note here that court area, the plan is to resurface both the court and the basketball court. So those two things have already been built into this tentative budget, and sounds like there's tons of support for that. And then another note he said is that in terms of our existing camps at Ridgeville, we would like to keep the 2 square and 4 square play areas sketched in that area, because those are used very heavily in the summertime when we are running our programming. And that was it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Natalie. And yes, I did see confirmation that Quentin wasn't trying to speak again necessarily at that point in time. I did see Coyne's name next, and so per my reminder that names would be the order, that would mean that Dan is next.
Thank you. This is Commissioner Coyne. I want to give a big shout out to Jackson. I understand, Jackson, correctly. You're an upcoming leader at Oakton, a 5th grader, and I just think that's phenomenal. We are so lucky to have you, Jackson. And also a shout out to all the boarders. This is a phenomenal idea. It's been on my heart for years. I would be more than happy as a community member to help serve any way that you would like me to. I can fundraise, I can plan, I can survey community members, I can build, I've got construction skills. I'd be happy to see this vision come to realization as soon as possible with the full support of the board and our organization. So to everyone who's brought this idea forward, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Dan. And it would be Debbie next.
I just wanted to say that I really would like to know a lot more about our liability. And so I think we should also wait to have the discussion, more of the discussion in depth until Brian's here.
Okay.
I'm not saying no, I'm just saying I want to know about the liability.
Yeah, definitely. And my sense of things is that, you know, I've heard, I don't even know if this is true, I've heard that insurance companies can flat out deny to cover the skate park at all. If they view it to be, you know, too much of a liability. It reminds me of a discussion that I had when I was on the board last time around relating to how they were refusing to cover a basketball court once it had reached a certain point of tree roots having made a major crack in it. It's just, it had become too dangerous. It was not, you know, it was not permissible to allow it to continue in that way. And so if insurance were to block this, again, I don't even know if that's really a thing. That is something to consider for sure. Personally, I view that every physical activity that people engage in has risk. And, you know, I don't view that personally as reason enough to block something like this, but absolutely it does need to be fleshed out fully. And we can all reach out to Brian. I intend to talk to him about the fact that we discussed this tonight, but I'll just remind everybody, you know, this was never a move for any kind of action, just a way to honor the people who showed up tonight to talk about something that's very important to them, that they'd love to see us make happen if we possibly can. And so I just wanted to let people have a little bit of an extended chance to speak. It doesn't have to be a huge discussion for the board to have. It's more to give the people who came tonight a chance to ask questions and actually get some answers. So moving on then, I think it's Matt then next to speak.
Thank you. So I noticed this skate park, the pop-up skate park, about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I love it. Juan also brought it to my attention, and me and him stopped by. Every time I've been there, it's been heavily used by people of all ages, different types of vehicle transportation options. It seems like it's been really successful during a tough time, especially for the parks and, you know, young people trying to do things outside. I talked to Brian about it. We are going to repave the surface for sure. Last I spoke to him, he was reaching out to the insurance, and it sounds like they didn't say no. So I appreciate all the support from everybody tonight. I think it's something this is a conversation we should move forward with. Also, to bring to everybody's attention is we are finalizing the budget for the next fiscal year right now. So it would be a push to get this into next year's budget. Not impossible, but it would be a push. So I think next steps would be maybe community members organizing amongst themselves, and then maybe a sit-down meeting between Ridgeville and interested community members. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Matt. I just have to correct myself here for a second. This is sort of unprecedented that we've added something to the discussion in the moment based on people showing up at citizen comment. And I actually misspoke to say that we are engaging with the citizens. I meant that we are able to respond to the questions that were posed by citizens during citizen comment because it is now on the agenda as a discussion item. So just to clarify, it's not a time for more citizen comments, just that we're kind of answering questions and anything else that the board wants to put out at this time. And I did mean for this to be quick, so I've said everything that I have to say. I just want to reiterate the future steps. So I hope that people reach out to me and that we can follow up on this. So then we had Natalie, you wrote your name. Does that mean that you were next to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to let everybody know, I typed my email address in the chat room. If you are interested in continuing the conversation or want to speak to me or Brian directly, you're welcome to contact me anytime. And I can connect with you on that. The other thing I wanted to say quickly is that I do, in conversations with Brian, one of the things that came up, and I think that he's still, I mean, obviously there's still conversations to be had with the insurance company. But one of the things that has come up in the past is, taking away green space is a big deal. Since this is a court that already exists and can be utilized, and the community has obviously shown us that it is being taken advantage of in this way, I think that that's been great. So I think the conversations that he's been having with the insurance company are specifically about that piece of property that's being used right now. So that's it. If you have more questions, please email me. I will talk to Brian. We will connect with you and we'll see what we can do.
Thanks, Natalie. So I did see that Rob Beatty's name was in there, but I saw you nodding also, Rob. So I know you heard me, and we can definitely follow up in the future. I look forward to speaking with anyone who wants to. Okay, so unless any other commissioners want to say anything at this time, we will move back to the agenda. That would conclude citizen comment, of course, as well. And we'd be moving on then to approval of the meeting minutes. And we'll go first to the July 9th, 2020 minutes.
Make a motion. McCourt makes a motion to approve the minutes of July 9th.
I'll second it.
Any questions or issues of any kind from anybody with those minutes?
Okay. Roll call vote. Braun?
Yes.
Point?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
McCourt?
Yes.
And Mitchell?
Yes.
Okay, and then the next meeting minutes to approve would be July 10th, 2020.
I'll make a motion. Oh, sorry, Martha.
No, go ahead.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for July 10th, 2020.
Second.
Was that Pat who seconded?
Yeah, McCourt seconded.
Okay, and we can roll call, Julie?
Yep. Braun?
Yes.
Point?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
McCourt?
Yes.
And Mitchell?
Yes.
Okay, moving on to approval of the monthly bills, and this would normally be Brian. He's not with us, so I assume that Natalie is in the position to talk about the bills for us.
Yeah, so some of the unusuals that he highlighted were, let's see, Auto Wares Group was for brakes for one of the trucks. Let's see, BSN Sports was some camp sport equipment to be used at the parks in the big containers. Evanston Lumber was lumber that we purchased to replace the wood on the benches. Ruben has actually, he just finished today, fix up all of the wooden benches at Ridgeville. There were 10 of them in total that we're going to be painting, and then having some of the mural art. Our artist is going to do some mural work on those benches. So that's what that lumber was for. The imaginary game, that's the 2 camps that are running this week and next week. And that was, it's a partner camp. And so that's what we owed them back from their registration fees. And that was all he wrote.
Natalie, are you aware what Saren Sisawat is?
Oh yes, those are our brochures.
Oh, great.
That's our graphic designer.
Great.
Sorry, Matt, he did put a note about that.
Natalie, this is Coyne. Hi. Normally, our executive director would be reading this. He's gone today, but is he okay?
He is. He had a family situation come up.
Oh, okay.
I move to approve the August bills in the amount of $50,905.38.
I'll second it.
Okay, just a reminder, everybody, to say your name when you're making a motion or seconding. And I have a question, Natalie. What does it mean to have an asterisk by somebody's name or by a line item? Hoop, comma, Charles, and then it looks like Microsoft has one as well.
I don't know why. I don't know what the asterisk is for. I can tell you that Charles Hoop was a refund. Any of the names that you see in here that just looks like a person's name, those are refunds from camps that we canceled. We had to cancel the Playwell, the Lego camp, and our dance camp. But I'm sorry, Martha, I don't know what the asterisk is for.
Okay, and then in terms of the brochure, I know that when we pay Saren, it's graphic design, it's the printing, it's various things. When you look at the breakdown at the end of this report, that's where it's got the details there. It says spring and summer 2019 brochures. So is that supposed to be 2020?
Yeah.
Okay.
It should be fall 2020.
Fall 2020. Okay.
Fall,
And then,
yeah.
and then my other question, it says quantity 10, 132. Do you know what that means?
I don't.
Okay. When I see those large numbers, and I know again it's multiple things
Martha,
paying for at once, but yeah.
Martha, I think that's 10,132. It's the number of brochures.
Oh, it looks like a comma. I mean, it looks like a space in between the two, but I mean, okay. Yeah, that actually was my next question is how many brochures total are we paying for when we're paying that amount?
Yeah, we mail out, I believe, about 10,000 to homes, and then we have some extras printed for distribution in the building and at events and things like that.
Okay.
You ready for a call vote?
Yeah, unless, Pat, did you have a question?
Maybe Jerry can answer it, or Charles, but I see that the legal fees are $1,740, but they're in 2 different categories. And one is uncategorized expenses and the other is, legal expenses. So I just was curious why they're in 2 different places.
I think that's just an error on Jessica's part when she filled the report out. It'll all go under legal fees.
It all goes under, is that a monthly bill or 2 months?
I don't have the details in front of me. I can't answer.
Okay. Maybe I could ask Brian that when I see him.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, Charlie's here if he knows as well.
Well, the invoice is in the office. Brian would normally have it with him in front of him. I'll see it tomorrow morning because I'm going to go in to sign checks with him. So we can look at that and give you an answer on it, Pat.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or issues from anybody? Okay, seeing that there are none, Julie, we can do the roll call vote.
Sure. Braun?
Yes. This is Braun, yes.
Coyne?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
McCourt?
Yes.
Mitchell?
Yes.
Okay, so moving on then to approval of petty cash expenditures, and I will turn it over to Natalie in place of Brian as well.
Yeah, so some notes that he left. The Amazon.com was some seeds and supplies for the Youth Grow team. Cleanfreak.com, I bought a ton of spray cleaner that we'll be using on all of the yoga equipment in the fall and throughout the building. It's safe for those kinds of surfaces, so we bought a ton of that. Jonathan was his paycheck, we had to rewrite it. It was mailed to him without a stamp on it. So, and we didn't want to make him wait until that was figured out by the post office. So we wrote him a check for that and then canceled the original check that we wrote once it was sent back to us. Dengio's was a staff lunch. National awards was the street banners that we just got, the new street banners for Ridge Avenue with the Ridgeville logo on them. The National Wildlife Federation, we certified as a wildlife habitat, and that was the fee for that. It includes a plaque that's going to be mailed to us that we can put up to let people know. And the YWCA was some equity workshops that myself and some board members attended virtually. And then Maggie Weber, Mark Padillo, Gerald McClendon, those were all checks for Concerts on the Ridge performances. That's it.
I have a couple questions. I suppose we should make the motion to approve and then discuss.
Make a motion to approve the petty cash for $4,067.77. It's McCord.
I'll second it, Ron.
Thank you. First of all, I see that the $75 times, what is it, maybe 3 for the Equity Summit. Is that workshops or the summit specifically?
They were for workshops.
Okay. Because I know that the summit did end up getting held, virtually,
Yes.
and you attended, and then maybe one other commissioner did as well.
Yes, I attended, and Commissioner Coyne was the only other commissioner that I had registered. So those were not refunded to us in any way. They just kind of rolled them into the.
Oh, I see. We didn't pay again.
We didn't pay again. No.
Okay. Okay. So in the bill, in the petty cash, it does say Equity Summit, but those are workshops.
Oh, does it? No, it wasn't the summit. It was their new. They have some new workshops out in their workshop series.
Right. And I did one of those. I think 3 of us did one of them. Is that what it was? Or was there another one as well?
Matt, myself, and you did one, and then I think Matt did a second.
Okay.
I think what happens is when Jessica goes to make an entry in the system and she specifies a payee, it brings up the last used description. If she doesn't type to override whatever the description is to change it, that could be why you sometimes get some funny descriptions on things.
Okay.
It's just picking up all over.
That's good to know. I mean, it's not a huge deal, but when we are looking at things like what did we do with our equity budget, it would be good to have that correct. So Natalie, if you, or Jerry, or whoever, if you want to make, just make Jessica aware of the correction there. And then my other question, just that I know you probably don't have an answer because it's the same thing, but there is an asterisk near Jonathan Connerly Bay. So that's just a note for Brian, I guess, is what are the asterisks?
Jerry, do you know?
I have no idea whether it's just a stray punch on the keyboard or whether it's a reminder to her that she's got to get a W-9 for the person or get some more documentation or what, but I have no idea. I don't use it in any way.
Cool.
Okay. My last question here is that on the first page, the heading is 2020, AP petty cash there. That's where it says Equity Summit 3 times for YW, 75 each. On the second page, it also has 4 YWCA Equity Summit charges at $75 each. So I don't know if that
there is a 4th one on the first page. It's just further down.
Okay. In that same section.
Yeah, it's like in the middle of the section underneath MailChimp.
Okay. So is that second place that we're seeing it? Just it's not that there was a total of 8 expenditures. It's just a different place it's being accounted for.
Well, under the 2020 AP petty cash, that's the detail that adds up to the 4,677.
The total.
It gets spread across the various expense accounts. And since all 4 of them went to CA21, that's why when you see the detail of CA21, they're all clustered together there.
Okay, makes sense. Anybody else with any questions? Natalie, did you already say what John Stork LLC is? Oh, that's one of the performers. Okay, okay. So I think we can move to a roll call vote unless anybody else. Okay, so we can roll call.
Commissioner Braun,
Yes.
Coyne,
Yes.
Gaines,
Yes.
McCourt,
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Julie. And so next on our agenda would be moving into monthly reports. And so Brian Rosinski would be first, and we can hear from Natalie about that.
Yeah. You guys are going to be sick of me by the end of this. Okay. Brian says, concerts started at the farmer's market on July 15th. We've had decent to good social distance crowds, but rain on July 15th and 29th. Lions Fruit Market is selling on site. As you know, on Thursday the 16th, shots were fired in the 200 block of Elmwood to the north. This is close to Brummel Park. No one was hurt, and Evanston police are investigating. The youth in the park's crew were on duty and cleared the park out to the east for safety reasons. We're doing some pruning on various parks as we find areas of overgrowth. The next major cleanup will be at Reba Park trees in the entrance area of the park. The maintenance crew installed 5 additional benches we ordered right before the budget year ended. We have completed replacing the benches in Leiter, Cayman West, and Cayman East. They also have completed adding fall zone wood chips to play circuit areas. Ruben and Marcos have installed the new storm windows on the Garage Art Studio. They look great. We are also in the process of repairing and painting the park benches at Ridgeville Park. We are replacing wood priming, and they will be painted with artist concepts. We'll discuss the 2021 budget at our meeting on August 13th in preparation for our August 24th special budget meeting. Please remember that we will pass the appropriation ordinance in September.
Thank you, Brian. I mean Natalie. I mean Brian, both of you. Moving on then to Jerry's report. And I don't even.
This month I have nothing for you.
I was just gonna say I don't think I don't see it there.
I'm kind of in limbo until after you pass tonight's bills. I can then, from the passage of tonight's bills, make all the accrual and final accounting entries to close out June 30th, which will then allow me to produce the reports needed to go into the final review of the budget on the meeting that's going to happen a week from Monday.
Okay, great. I have 2 things relating to that. One is, Jerry, in those great graphs that you showed us a few months back that gave us some great perspective on more than just a year. So I think some of them had as many as maybe, was it as many as 10 years that we were looking at times there, or was it like a 5-year?
I think every chart went back to 2004.
Okay. So I wanted to know if those were originally created in color, and if so, if there was any way that we could get digital copies. I hate to print unnecessarily in paper and use the ink and everything, but I love those graphs, and if they were in color originally, it would be great to be able to see them differentiated by color instead of just versions of gray. It's a little bit hard to read them the way they were intended, you know, when they print in black and white.
Yeah. No, they definitely were in color when I distributed them, so.
Okay.
If they didn't reach you in color, something got lost in translation along the way.
Well, and I wouldn't expect that in our packet they'd be printed in color necessarily, but for the purpose of understanding the data the way that it was supposed to be presented, I would love to be able to see those in color. And I may have some follow-up questions, you know, either before or at our budget meeting. So if Natalie, if we could get just maybe emailed copies of that original document that had the color, that would be great. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't.
Okay, I'll follow up with you, Natalie, because however it was printed by you guys in order to go into our physical packets, the original document, hopefully the digital format of it probably had the color. Is that right, Jerry?
Right.
Okay, so yeah.
I've got it somewhere on file. I can provide it again.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. And then unless anyone feels like they need it, I would say that we can all probably plan to have our previous documents in front of us that were already given to us in physical form rather than printing those again, just when we're at the budget meeting. And Brian, I talked to him today about the ideas of, you know, having some additional capital improvement projects to tap into unexpended funds. And he clarified for me, I thought this was how it goes. He clarified that this is how it goes, that we need to plan for that stuff as part of the September appropriations ordinance. Am I getting that right, Jerry? So that's what we approve in September, and that will include, and maybe everybody is already aware.
Basically, you know, when we walk in the door at the September meeting, the concrete is pretty well set. You know, our last chance to do any adjusting to the numbers is going to be the special meeting a week from Monday. Typically at that meeting, the concrete is pretty well set, and all we're doing is just doing a final just validation review of the numbers to see that kind of what we planned makes sense and is consistent with what prior years expenditures have been. This year, I think it is going to be a little bit different kind of meeting in that I would hope that you're going to have a full discussion of the budget and capital projects and just kind of a lot of last minute adjustments to get the wish list filled out for the budget. In other words, it's going to be more than just a final validation. This is going to be a working meeting to really finalize numbers, and there may be some big movements in the numbers because of all the capital projects that are under discussion.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jerry. Yeah, that was it from me actually relating to that budget meeting. And so we will move on then to Natalie's monthly report.
Okay. All right. This month, we are celebrating the seniors in our community with a book discussion of A Man Called O by Frederick Backman. The ritual readers meet virtually on the last Sunday of the month in August. That will be August 30th at 3 o'clock. You can email me for information or visit the website. Virtual camps have come to a close. We served about 50 or more kids this summer with virtual camps. The camp director staff did so awesome. They came up with themes and lesson plans for every day. They really rolled with the punches and were a great asset to me this summer. So a big thank you to all of them. We still have plenty of supplies left over from the supplies that I purchased for the activity packs. So we'll use those for programming throughout this year and next summer as well. Fingers crossed. The imaginary game has started. It's going very well. It's great to see the kids outside in the park. They're doing an excellent job wearing their masks and the social distancing with the other people in the community that are enjoying the parks. They're doing a terrific job. So that's going well. That runs this week and then through the end of next week. Shakespeare on the Ridge. Mudlark Theater did a performance of Much Ado About Nothing at Ridgeville Park. In an effort to maintain social distancing, we did not do any promotion for this show. So they had a nice crowd. It was mostly families of the kids and some local neighbors that live around the area that came out for it. But again, it was nice to be able to do something even small in that way to give them an opportunity, the kids an opportunity to get outside and do the performance. Concerts on the Ridge is going so well. We had the best night ever last night. People are coming out. It is gives me a little bit of anxiety, but everybody is doing a great job. And I think because of the social distancing is one of the things that makes it look like the whole park is so packed. But Marcos and Ruben, you know, they painted the squares in the park. People come early, they claim their square. They set up blankets and chairs. Gerald McClendon was with us last night. We were all dancing. The music dudes were with us the week before, and you know, same thing. It was really fun. So concerts are going to continue to run every Wednesday night from 6 to 7:30 at Ridgeville Park through September 2nd. Youth Grow Team, you got to hear a little bit from Catherine tonight. They're doing a great job. Catherine actually did a tour with a couple of our commissioners and folks from the city that have been supporting this program and this partnership. And, you know, the kids introduced themselves and talked to them and took them on a tour around the garden. We recorded it. I'm still working on editing that together for our YouTube channel, but it's going really well. Catherine's done a really fantastic job. We've had some meetings this week, myself and Brian, and myself, Catherine, and Martha and Matt, to talk about the future of the program and, you know, what we can do next year to keep it rolling and make it even stronger and expand as we're able. And I'm looking forward to doing that. Fall programming. We are offering limited capacity in-person classes for both youth and adults. I've been working on the website this week, trying to get everything up there. The fall brochure is out. If it's not at your home yet, it will be soon. There was a little backup in the post office, so it took a little longer than anticipated to get it out to homes, but it's on its way. So you'll be able to look through there and see what's going on. Again, as Catherine mentioned earlier, we are looking for volunteers to help us with some of the gardening projects that will go into the fall, and then of course next spring. But obviously this fall is, Catherine, this fall is important. So if you're willing to come out and get your hands dirty, we would love to have you. Yeah, so we're doing some limited capacity classes. It'll be a 12-week fall session. Some of the classes that we're offering will be virtual through Zoom. Registration for those classes opens on Monday at 10 o'clock. And the District 65 enrichment. So someone had from the District 65 PTA board had reached out to me about doing some enrichment classes virtually for all of District 65. Since we're not able to do our half-day workshops this season, I spoke with JC Herman about potentially making her Stories in Action class a after-school enrichment class virtually. She agreed. We had a great meeting with the D65 PTA and kind of worked that out. So they were looking for some classes to offer that would be low cost. And I talked to Brian, and we're going to be able to offer them for free. So these classes will run 10 to 12 weeks. We're still kind of ironing out the details, but she'll be teaching 2 classes a week after school. One of them will be the Stories in Action class that she does normally for our half days. And the other class she'll be doing is an executive function class called Brain Effects. So as we're working that out, I'll keep you all posted on how that goes, but I'm really excited for that partnership. And I'm excited to be offering some free enrichment opportunities to all of our kids in D65. And that's it.
Thank you, Natalie. That's some awesome stuff. It's great to see some things starting to happen again, even though we're still in a pandemic here. And speaking of yoga, I've got a question for you, Natalie. Obviously, we don't have too many more weeks necessarily here of nice weather, but outdoor yoga is kind of a popular thing. It's become increasingly popular, you know, throughout the years, and was obviously one of the ways that people were safely engaging in exercise, you know, in the context of this pandemic. And I didn't think of it until just now. I don't know if we've even maybe already started doing that, but is outdoor yoga something that we either have or could offer for the remainder of the nice weather?
We have offered outdoor yoga in the past. Our yoga teacher is pregnant, so she's being very cautious about her interactions, which is why her one of our yoga teachers, who would normally do that, is being very cautious right now about her social distancing. So that's why her classes will be online. I think that, you know, some of the classes that we're offering in the fall, like the West African drumming, for example, will be outside until it's not okay to be outside, and then they'll move in. So I know Laura Downey, some of her dance classes, she's thinking about doing them outside. So so the classes that I've scheduled, some of them may take advantage of being out in the parks while they can. But in terms of like a specific outdoor yoga for right now, I don't have anything lined up. But if anybody is interested in teaching one, email me.
Okay, great. And in terms of registering a number of people for any indoor programming that we start to offer, is it possible that maybe you would be able to accommodate more people outdoors than you can indoors? And if so, is there a way to structure the registration so that the outdoor is sort of a mini session and can hold more people, but then when it moves indoors, it's fewer people?
That's tough, right? So we normally offer drop-in, for example. Anybody can come to any class anytime and pay a fee for that. Or you can register for a full session of something and save yourself a little bit of money. Because it's programmed as a 12-week session and we're being very cognizant of managing how many people are in the space at once, registration is limited. So for adult classes in that main studio space, it's limited to 10, for example. For kids, it's limited from anywhere between 6 and 8. So the problem is if I allow 20 people to come and register for the full session, once we move inside, then we're going to have too many people in that space. So for now, it's just set at the number that it's set at, and whoever's taking the class will be able to be indoors or outdoors.
Okay. And then if somebody were to want to teach some outdoor yoga specifically, or outdoor anything that would be additional to what you've got going on, we could probably accommodate that if we have instructors interested and
Yeah.
participants ready to sign up.
Yeah, and I'm doing more and more partnerships all the time now, which was my goal. So especially if there's organizations, for example, I was just contacted by a woman who works for a company called Language in Action. So we're partnering with them to offer some online Spanish classes for both youth and adults.
Awesome.
And we're actually, that particular program, we're actually going to be able to collaborate with lots of other park districts because it's virtual. So whereas we have a class that might not run because we only have 2 people signed up, when you work with the full, like other park districts, you might get 10 people signed up, then the class can run, and then they just charge the districts accordingly to how many people registered through them. So like, that's a really cool thing. So yeah, I mean, you know, Malik is somebody that I've spoken to before. They've, I can't remember the name of her.
Hip Circle?
Yes. They've offered some outdoor classes at Brummel. I think she's done some yoga classes there. So those kinds of partnerships, you know, I'm always looking for them. So whether it's somebody that wants to come on board, payroll at Ridgeville and be a Ridgeville instructor, or somebody that wants to partner with me to offer their own classes, I'm certainly open to that.
Great. Jerry, did you have a hand up?
I was just going to comment that, Natalie, my brochure arrived in the mail today, so they are going out.
Yay!
And I've been having a lot of technical difficulties where I get kicked out of the room and have to come back in again. I had sent a text, and I don't know if it reached you or not. The color charts were in the citizen packet that was electronically distributed by Natalie back on June 11th. So you should have a color copy there.
Okay, great. That's a good point. I tend to rely on the physical copy that's dropped off at my house. So I didn't even realize that the digital copy had the color. Thank you for confirming that. So I can just go back and look at that. As can we all.
It'll be on the website too, Martha.
What's that, Natalie?
If it was in the digital pack, then it's on our website as well.
Right. I figured if it was emailed to us, it's the same thing that was posted. But like I said, I don't generally look at the digital one because, especially with these Zoom meetings, I can't easily look at something digital. I'd rather have the physical copy, and that's true for the meetings too. But that's a good note for the future, that if there's ever anything color, I can find it in the digital copy. Okay, so Natalie, that was it from you, right? Unless anyone else has any other questions for Natalie. So then moving on to the update from the Ready Committee, which tonight we're going to hear from You guessed it, Natalie again.
Oh yeah. So just a quick update. So we had a special meeting on Tuesday evening to hear Dr. Effiam's equity assessment report. For anybody that might be watching or watches this meeting later, just so you know, you can access that report. It's on our website. It is linked to our board and governance page, and you'll see where it says equity climate assessment, I believe is how she titled it. So that's available for you. She went over that assessment. I will be putting the whole meeting, the recorded meeting, up on our YouTube channel tomorrow. So any folks that would like to watch that will have access to that as well. Within that meeting, we formalized the Ready Committee members, and we have not yet scheduled our first meeting, but we will be doing that soon, and I'll coordinate with folks through email to do that.
This is Coyne. Hi, Natalie. Did you get a chance to think about the question I asked regarding whether the Ready committees will be public, and can anybody come, and will that be publicly shared?
Yeah, that's a great question, Dan. I don't really have authority to make that decision, so I think that this is a great time to talk about it with Charles. I know from what I understand, and everybody please tell me if I misinterpreted this, but I was under the impression that we selected two commissioners, or not we, but two commissioners were allowed to be on the committee because they were not going to be public meetings. If they are public meetings, then that would mean that we would need to live stream or Zoom them, do the agenda, put the notices up, all of that. So I don't know. I mean, that's really for the board to decide, and I'll do whatever I need to do to make it happen.
So Natalie, did you feel like this is a time that we're asking Charles questions directly? I don't know if I.
Yeah, so Commissioner Coyne had emailed me and just expressed interest that he wanted to be able to participate in the Ready committee meetings moving forward. Now that we've decided, now that we've formalized the committee, because we have two commissioners that are part of the Ready committee, which is Commissioner Braun and Commissioner Gaines. In order for Commissioner Coyne or any other commissioner to participate in the meetings, they would need to be public. Is that correct, Charles?
So we talked about this briefly last month. There's public, and then there's public for the purposes of the Open Meetings Act. So I don't know how we're doing the Ready meetings. Are we just having them? Anybody who shows up at Tuesday at 7 o'clock can participate in the meeting. That's fine. And that's open to the public, but that doesn't mean we have to record the meetings. We don't have to have all the requirements of the Open Meetings Act take place with respect to the meeting. If we're going to have more than two commissioners at a meeting discussing Park District business, then there's a violation of the Open Meeting Act unless we make sure that it's a public meeting pursuant to the statute. The fact that two commissioners show up at a meeting and there's an audience and somebody in the audience is a commissioner isn't necessarily a problem. But if we have a small meeting of 10 or 11 people and there's two commissioners there, and then another commissioner shows up and you're discussing Park District business, then it's a violation of the Open Meetings Act. So it really is a question of what we want to do with these meetings and what we want them to perform for the district, and then we can make a decision on how we want to do this. But are these meetings open to anybody who just shows up?
I don't know that we've made that decision. I was under the impression that no, that it was just a meeting of the committee to discuss things, and then one of the members of the committee would report at the board meetings monthly on what had been discussed. But I could be wrong. And again, I certainly don't have the authority to make that decision. That's a board decision, but that's what I understood.
And to clarify, this is Coyne. I wasn't asking to participate as a board member or as a committee member. I just wanted to know if because we're a government agency and it's an official committee, if that means that is a public meeting that anybody can come. And if that's the case, I want to come and just be in the audience.
So the fact that a committee is formed that reports back to the board does not in and of itself make it a meeting subject to the Open Meetings Act. It does not require it that it be public.
Even if there's a third commissioner in the room?
If
Or a
you have
fourth or a fifth?
commissioners meeting and public business is discussed, then it's going to be subject to the Open Meetings Act.
Well, some of this is logistics, it feels like, because, I mean, for the sake of us meeting digitally, the way we've done it so far with this committee, and to my knowledge, this is the only committee Ridgeville Park District has ever had. So we're kind of in uncharted territory with regard to, you know, what the precedent is for committees. There is no precedent. But what we've done so far with this committee is we've met digitally because of the pandemic. The people who are on the committee receive the Zoom link for the meeting and tune in that way. But because it's not subject to the Open Meetings Act thus far, there's no public link. It's not something that's even open to other people. If and when we meet physically, it would probably be similar in the sense that we're meeting either at Ridgeville or at somebody's house, whatever the case may be. And it's not public in the sense that it's been publicized. Here's the meeting time and date and location, and anyone is welcome. So that's just, you know, I'm just covering the ground of what we've done so far. And if there is any precedent, it's that's what we've said, is that our committees are, you know, a group of people who have been appointed or otherwise, you know, joined in the ways that we solicited members from the community via survey, et cetera. And then, of course, at Dr. Effiam's suggestion, we formed that committee to be including no more than 2 commissioner seats and then no more than 7 community members on that committee. So, you know, with the way that we've had done it, and then the way that Dr. Effiam recommended that we move forward with nominating from the body of people who had participated in the training so far, and then confirming those nominations by vote, I feel like we're in a position where we just move forward with the committee in that way. I don't personally see, and we can discuss this, but I don't personally see a reason to transition that committee either to having 3 board members or to being subject to the Open Meetings Act. I don't see any clear purposes that are served by making those choices of a change in designation. So, I mean, yeah.
This is a committee that essentially just meets to discuss issues that come up and make recommendations to the board.
That's correct. And, you know, because there is no, I mean, Charlie, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we talked about whether that committee, as it stood previously and currently stands, was subject to OMA or not, you know, you told us that there are committees that are technically designated as public bodies that have decision-making power. In those contexts, which we don't currently have, those are subject to the Open Meetings Act, not just because they have a quorum of the board on them. Even if they don't have a quorum of the board as committee members, they're still subject to OMA because they have decision-making power, and that's the part that makes them necessary to be publicized to the public. If our committee is not making decisions and they are instead advising the board, the decision-making body, at open meetings, that's the part that makes it open to the public. In my eyes. And because this committee is so new, I kind of view that as another reason to, again, at Dr. Effiam's recommendation, keep the committee only containing the people that were trained in the ways that we were trained. And what the future holds might be totally different. But, you know, we worked very hard to kind of figure out exactly how we would do it. That's what we went with. I'm kind of in a position personally, again, where I don't see a need for a change to that right now. I've seen a number of hands. I'm going to go with Matt first because I see your name in the chat.
I'd encourage the Ready Committee to be open to the public, but not subject to the Open Meetings Act. I think it's good for community engagement, for maybe mentoring future Ready Committee members. I just think it's a good idea. I think meeting virtually. I know Ridgeville has the capability to have committee members being able to speak and public not, and maybe committee members on camera, public not. And you can do the same thing when we go back to in-person meetings. So I would encourage the Ready Committee to be open to the public. That's
Matt, can you say that last part one more time? That the functionality difference of on camera versus off camera?
Oh, I think as an administrator, Natalie has the power to, I know she sometimes sends me an invite where I'm a panelist.
The webinar.
Right.
So you can designate panelists or, committee members.
Some people are just audience.
Yes.
And Natalie, is that the functionality we use at the board meetings, or is that something different we've used for the what was it, for the Ready Committee meetings, or for the and the equity and the recent equity meeting as well, where I guess that was a Ready Committee meeting, but it was also where Dr. Effiam gave us her report. And so the panelist means you're on camera and you're basically a presenter, right? And then anyone else is open to join in, but cannot unmute themselves. Is that how that works?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, full control over participants. And you'll get a special panelist invitation if you're going to be seen on camera. So I control all of that.
Okay. I would just say that, to be clear, I don't personally see any reason to not allow the public to be part of, what the committee is doing. But on the other hand, I don't want to speak for all of the community members who have chosen to join that committee, because I could see it being true. And again, I'm not speaking for them in one direction or another, but I could see it being true that people who decide to step up and get involved and volunteer on a committee like this aren't necessarily signing up to be, projected in a way that is recorded and open to the public, and that anyone might be able to, comment and view it in the future and all of that. It just seems like the discussions might be different. And again, not necessarily in a bad way, but I don't want to speak for those community members. And that's one of many reasons that I feel like any discussions about how we're going to change the functionality of the committee as it stands right now is something we should refer to the committee itself. I mean, that's something that, unless it's very clear right now and so somebody from this board makes a motion and there's something that we would vote on, which of course we're not doing because it's not on the agenda as such, but I would say that the first step is to talk to the committee itself and see what they think. We don't even have an action list in place yet for what that committee is going to be jumping into and discussing and doing research on, et cetera. But again, I don't at all see a desire or a need to keep it from the public. I guess I just thought, as I said already, that when that committee comes to the board to speak and present or make recommendations, all of that, that's when it's public. I mean, inherently it's public at that point, and that the discussions that happen that lead up to the recommendations aren't necessarily open to the public. But I'm open to discussing it further. Matt, I saw your hand there, so.
Can we refer this to the Ready Committee and then have a report back to the board at the next board meeting?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Charlie, is again, we haven't had any committees. I don't know what the procedure is here. If we are officially referring something to a committee, is that something we need a motion and a vote on, or?
I don't really think that's what you want to do. I think you're basically going to wait to hear what the Ready Committee has to say on this. They'll get back to you. You don't need to have any formal reference or anything of that nature. And actually doing that, I think, starts making it more of a policy-making board. Basically, what I think everybody here wants is you want to know what the members of the Ready Committee think about whether or not they should be open to the public and whether they want to participate if they're going to be on video. And I think, you guys can find that out and get a report back, and you'll consider what you want about that. And you'll either recommend that they make it open to the public or not.
Okay. and right now we're of course in the piece of our meeting where we had, you know, heard from Natalie as a representative of the Ready Committee. And we will, you know, discuss everything that we've just discussed with the rest of the committee, because to my knowledge, there's nobody else tuning in tonight from the committee. So yeah, I think we're at that stage where we'll talk to them and we'll bring it back to the board after we discuss. So unless anyone has any additional questions, issues with that Ready Committee update, we'll move on. Old business. First point is, it says for action, amendment to the general ordinance of the Ridgeville Park District, section 6.14 and 6.21, and this is Mitchell, so I'll turn it over to you, Matt.
Thank you. We spoke at the last board meeting about trying to make the ordinance conform to our new barbecue policy. I volunteered to do that. I made a draft. I sent it to Charles, who came out with a final draft that I agree with. So I guess to start the discussion, I would move to, and actually, Charles, how should I move?
So you prepared a written ordinance, and you want to move, I think, for that written ordinance to be adopted by the board. And if somebody seconds that, we can then proceed to talk about it.
Right.
Everybody has the written ordinance, I believe.
Yeah. So there is a written ordinance. I propose that the board adopt that ordinance. I move.
This is Coyne. I second.
Sorry, I was muted. I'm looking at the attachments, Matt, to your email, because this was not printed and put in our packet, was it? I don't have it printed.
No, it is the last thing in the digital packet. And I sent this as an individual email to each of the board members.
I'm sorry, I was wrong. I do have it in the packet, so that's helpful because it's just so small on my phone. I just wanted to say that the one from Charlie is the one that we got from you like more recently than your first draft, and so I don't know if I don't see the one from Charlie printed. Is that correct? We just have that in email or digital?
Correct. That was not in the packet that was delivered to your house.
Okay, so then just for the sake of moving forward with it easily verbally, Charlie, what would you say were your main changes to what it was that Matt drafted?
So, you know, most of it's just form. The main change is in the amendment to section 6.14. Matt added a sentence at the end of his version that specified that all coal shall be properly disposed of in receptacles provided by the Park District. My issue with that, not really an issue, I just thought it would be better if we decided who had that responsibility with respect to the coals. And so the change I made was to take the prior sentence and just continue that on. So it now reads, every such fire shall be under the continuous care and direction of an adult from the time it is kindled until the time it is completely extinguished, and who shall cause all coals to be properly disposed of in receptacles provided by the Park District. So it's clear that the supervising adult has that responsibility to make sure that happens.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that, and sometimes legal wording is a little bit weird in contexts that are, you know, not legal, but that makes sense that that you're specifying, because I totally get that. In Matt's version, all coals shall be properly disposed, sort of like, okay, is the Park District doing that, or is the person who made the fire? So I think that's helpful. And anybody else have questions, issues?
Just McCourt.
Yes, Pat.
So we've been doing this incrementally and not really maybe cohesively. Does it says the rules as maybe prescribed by the director or the board? Are those rules written yet, or are they? Have we talked about it? Does this mean that? Does agreeing to this mean that there's going to be 5 urns put out in the parks in the next 2 weeks, or is that still an open question?
So can I answer? My understanding of what we have agreed on is listed on the website, and no, it does not mean we've agreed on 5 urns. That's one of the minor disagreements we have at the board level, if it's 4 or 5 urns.
Well, it's also whether they're placed there or not. So it's more than just whether it's 4 or 5 or 3 or what. No.
I was not clear that was. I thought that was a consensus that we would have, because the board agreed to purchase them, correct?
The board agreed to purchase them, but I've not seen anybody agree to place them in the park on a permanent basis. Again, my attitude is that they should be placed there on a requested basis and used whenever anybody wants to use them, where it conforms with what's going on in the park that particular day, and they be removed the following week. So I have no problem with people doing it and having the park district put the urn in the appropriate place, but I object to placing 5 or 4 or any urns in the park on a permanent basis. I think that creates a lot of possibilities and a lot of potential problems. And if, for instance, we wanted to do it at Ridgeville and you had an urn in the park, does that mean somebody could have a barbecue on Bike the Ridge Day? Or where are they going to park? Are they going to park in our parking lot? So I just think we've not delved into the practical aspect of this. And again, I've objected from the beginning to signage. So somebody would have to inquire to the park district, to the, Brian or Natalie, and give the basic information where it's going to be. We would set it up. We would have a picnic table. We would have some recycling, and we would remove it when they're done. So make it as easy as possible, but they're not going to sit there on a permanent basis to be used and controlled and, not managed at all by Ridgeville. That I object to. So I agree to this. If this is an affirmative, I think what you started to say, Matt, is that no, it doesn't mean the next step is taking place.
So yeah, actually, my reading of this is that barbecuing is allowed in such places and at such times as may be designated for such purpose and under such rules as prescribed by the Director of Parks and Recreation or the board. So that is what we're agreeing to tonight. That's the pending motion. I agree. It seems like we don't have a consensus about exactly some of the fine points of those rules and regulations. We should do that going forward, but that is not on the agenda for tonight.
Okay, so just to respond to what both of you just said, I definitely agree with what I take to be one of Pat's points, if I'm hearing him correctly here, which is that it's maybe not ideal and sort of problematic to have been going about this in sort of a piecemeal way, if for no other reason than the fact that it's a bit hard to keep track of mentally a month later exactly what we agreed to, and yet it was recorded, so we can pretty easily figure out at least what was said and what was voted on specifically. I actually think it's a very interesting point here that we did agree to buy those urns or receptacles or whatever we're calling them. We also agreed which parks each of them correspond to, at least by board majority. There was a suggestion that we buy 4 instead of 5, if I recall correctly, and we ultimately went with the 5. What I find interesting now is that Pat is interpreting that as having only been approval to buy the urns, not also approval to install them in the parks. And it sounds like Matt thinks that we did, in fact, vote that we were buying them for the purpose of putting them in the parks. Not that that would be a separate step. Is that correct from both of you so far?
I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
Okay, because I definitely also thought we were approving not just buying them, but that they corresponded to those particular parks that we had walked. Brian had walked it with, I forget the man's name from the fire department. They decided those were the safe locations. We talked about that some more months later, trying to, figure out if we were changing it or adding it. We then decided that those were the locations. And again, I know there was an issue from at least one commissioner about wanting to not include maybe one of those. But it did ultimately pass that we bought the 5. This is an example of something that I think we really would benefit and might even really need Brian's input in order to finalize this. Changing the ordinance is kind of a big deal, and it's not that I'm resisting doing it or that I even have any problems with the language that's been chosen so far. But there are two things that I think we need to go over at least, which can't be done tonight without Brian. One is getting his opinion on this new language. Unless Matt and or Charlie, have you guys spoken specifically to Brian about this and gotten his approval?
Yes. Brian, I did speak with Brian. He doesn't have an objection to it. Separately, I think making this ordinance change still, it's encoding that you have to follow the rules prescribed by the Director of Parks and Recreation or the board. So there's no reason not to pass this. And then the rules are, you need to follow the rules of the board and the director.
Well, that's actually an interesting point too that I wanted to bring up to you, Matt, and to Charlie, and then I'll go to you, Natalie. I see your hand. Why are we saying the director or the board? Because that almost makes it seem like if there was a disagreement between the board and the director, that the person wanting to have a fire could go with whichever rules they liked better. I mean, it's really that Brian and the board, or the director rather, because it's not always going to be Brian, the director and the board, are in agreement at a certain point. We're trying to reach that right now as to what those rules are. And then, and I understand that the ordinance is more permanent and the rules could change.
Sure. Can I just go back just to that point about your legal interpretation? My reading of that is the director can make rules or the board can make rules. There's rules that can come about in the park district from 2 different mechanisms. It's not assuming that there's conflicting rules. The board can make rules. The executive director can also make rules. So if rules come from the director or from the board, those are the rules that are encoded in the ordinance.
And the rules of the board will control over the rules of the director, since he works for you.
Right. It almost seems like it could just say rules from the park district. Why does it need to say the board or the director? I mean, the park district is comprised of the director and the board. As Matt just said, the board can make rules, the director can make rules, and the director's rules actually defer to us if there is a disagreement. So, I don't know. That's it's not a huge point, but I think that wording is a bit unnecessary and confusing. Natalie, I had more to say, but why don't we hear from you first?
I just wanted to say one of Brian's other notes that he left for me was that his preference would be that we do deliver the receptacles and then take them away when folks are done.
Okay. Well, actually, that's really interesting because I was going to say that it was my understanding none of us have seen these yet. At least I haven't. I thought they were like big and heavy, and that when they're in place, they're in place. There's a door that you open to get the receptacle for the coals out so that Ruben and Marcos can actually dump those and put the thing back, and then the door closes. I was not under the impression that these would be moving around, and I'm a little bit worried about that just because, if we were asking, and I said this previously, I'll reiterate it, if we're asking every single fire that's going to take place and the person who makes that fire to ask us if that's okay, because that's our point to say, oh, actually no, because it conflicts with this event, or otherwise yes, right? It would always boil down to it's probably a yes unless there's a conflict with another event. then we know that it's happening and we've said yes. That would also allow us to put the coals there. If our rules don't require people to give us notice, then that's in direct conflict with the idea that we're going to deliver the receptacle just for that fire. That doesn't work. And this taps into what Pat has said, which is that there's a lot of practical application that has not been considered and not been discussed. I want to make it very clear that I do not oppose fires in the park, but I want them to be safe, and I do want them to happen in an organized, controlled fashion. And we're kind of all over the place now. So I would like to propose, first of all, that we take a 5-minute break because I need to. But I would also like to propose on this issue that we do table the vote on the ordinance as it's been presented to us tonight, and that we move forward in the next meeting with a final, action on barbecue that just closes the book. Anything that's lingering for people, if you have questions, bring it to the September meeting and let's finish this up. Because to say that there's a bunch to consider is fair, but then to draw it out forever and not consider those things, that's not fair. We need to move forward on these things. And so, Natalie, I'll definitely touch base with Brian, but if you can also help relay my sentiment that I would like to have us look at everything all at once, and anyone who has any issues who wants to flesh them out and we can discuss them, we do it all at once. We finalize the ordinance, we make sure that the rules are finalized, we figure out which parks are getting the things and whether they're getting permanently or not, and then we kind of close the book on this. Yeah, Natalie. Oh, you were just agreeing? I thought you wanted to talk too.
No, that was just, I'm supporting you.
Okay, so then I'm making that as a motion, by the way, because that's a tabling. So is there a second?
Second. McCord.
Okay, and any further discussion before we roll call vote on that? Okay, so Julie, if you don't mind, roll call voting, roll call us. Take a roll call vote, that's what I mean to say.
Ron?
Commissioner Coyne?
Yes. I'm sorry, yes.
Coyne?
I thought the question was if anyone had a comment to make. I was trying to make a comment, so can we go back to that?
Yes, of course. I'm sorry, I did not see that, Dan.
All right. This is Coyne. I'm embarrassed and disappointed, but it's not the first time. What I've heard the last 8 years that I've served from many of our people in our community that they want to be able to safely barbecue in our parks, just like they do in the Evanston parks. We've had the fire marshal come, we've had our executive director propose some things, and it just feels like me that we have commissioners that are not using their equitable lens, and they are blocking this for our community. And to me, it's a shame. However, that's democracy, and I get it. But this is absolutely ridiculous. There is nothing wrong with people barbecuing in the parks. And Martha, I agree with you. That's why we got these receptacles to put them in. We spent a special meeting looking at exactly where those are going to go. But the obstacles that continue to pop up in our need to adhere to our commitment to our community to allow them to barbecue in the park is a travesty. I'm sorry this has happened. Martha, if next month we can have it, as you said, shut and closed or whatever, that's great. That'd be great. And get it rolling again for the next season. But we went through this whole season without barbecuing.
Okay, Dan, I can't tell if you're frozen or if you finished speaking. Is he frozen, everybody?
Oh, you can't hear.
It looks like he's frozen.
Oh, there he is.
There he is.
Yeah, Dan, it sounded like you finished, but I wasn't sure. and you
I'm
were
sorry, was I frozen?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh,
I
I'm
mean,
getting
we
closer to
heard
my router.
everything. I think just at the end. I think it's
Oh,
at the
just
end
simply-
it froze.
You closed. You said that's all, or
Yeah,
Oh,
you said
yeah.
that's all, and then you froze.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so assuming we didn't cut you off there or miss anything, I just wanted to respond that I do think that, it was the right thing to do to move forward on some of the barbecue policy as I proposed previously and as we ultimately did, in order to take some action in the ways that we could agree upon, rather than hold up the whole process. But of course, as a result, we've now approved some of it, but not all of it. And that's why I'm saying, I think it, whatever it is that we do, we should do it next month if possible, all at once, which I would love to include a recap in writing as much as possible about what the rules are, where they will be posted. I also, I'm curious about the ordinance perhaps being specific about where those rules can be found, because probably in perpetuity, the website will be the answer. I don't know if that's if that's not, maybe it's just implied. The lawyers can answer that question here. But if we're going to allude to rules in the ordinance, it's probably maybe best to say where those rules can be found. But I just want to make it clear too, because we're recording, this is an open meeting. I want this on the record. It's my understanding that nobody on this board has been against barbecuing. And furthermore, it is actually the policy of the Park District that barbecuing is allowed. There have been very few barbecue requests that have ever been denied. I think the problem has always been, if there's any problem at all, that not everybody in the community knows that you can barbecue. And that is a problem, because if we allow something and it's something that people want to do, but there's that disconnect of the fact that we allow it and people want to do it, but they don't know that they can, that's a problem. That's a communication problem, and it falls on us. We need to communicate about what we allow, when, how, where, why, etc. And so I think it's my understanding, it's my stance, that's why we're doing this. We're clarifying. We're making it very clear what we're allowing. But in the process of doing that, if there's any changes, we need to consider them carefully. We need to consider safety. So, again, I'd like us, we've had a lot of time to talk about this, a lot of time to think about this. I'd like us to try to make some decisions one way or another next month at our meeting. And that's all I have to say. If there's any additional discussion, let's have it. Otherwise, let's move back to that roll call vote. So give me a thumbs up, please, visually, if you're ready to vote on this. Debbie, you're on mute.
Oh, I'm not sure what we're voting on now.
We're voting to table this until next month. And that's the vote. But I included also that I'd like to see us finish this up in September. And I'll follow up with you and Natalie and Brian about what it is I'd like to see presented to us so that we can kind of do everything at once next month. So voting to table the vote on the tabling the action on the ordinance change is what we're voting on now.
Okay, Braun,
Yes.
Coin,
Dan?
No.
no. Gaines,
Yes.
McCourt,
Yes.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion passes. Thank you, Julie. Matt, it's my understanding that we are still tabling the IAPD self-assessment item due to tabling non-essential business. Is that your understanding as well, or were you speaking on this tonight?
No, I am tabling it.
Okay. And then we're at the point of discussing the 2020/2021 tentative budget, which would have been a Brian discussion. Natalie is gonna take that for us, I think. But I just want to reiterate that I would like us to have a 5-minute recess. Right now it's 9:36. Let's call it 9:40. Actually, if everybody is okay with that, in other words, they don't need additional time, then we'll come back to this at 9:40.
Okay.
If you haven't already turned your camera back on, please do so just so we know that you're back with us. Or perhaps you can just unmute yourself, Dan, and tell us that you are tuned back in. Oh, now I think he disappeared again off the screen. We'll give it a minute. I just want to eat more candy. These are really good.
I don't think Jerry's back.
Maybe not. There's no way to know when it's muted and the screen is black. It's just, it's hard to know. So
There he is.
I never left.
Okay, would somebody maybe text Dan, because I don't want to start without him, but I don't know if he's having technical difficulties or what.
I don't have Dan's cell phone.
I'll text him. I'll do it.
I would share my candy if we were in the same room. I would.
Well, we can virtually have it.
Oh, I said candy too loud. Somebody just came in. Want to say hi?
Hi, Sarah.
All right, here's a candy. You need to go back with Daddy, please.
We're going on a dog walk.
Okay.
Has she asked yet when you're going to be done?
About 10 times, probably.
Debbie knows.
Been asking for since 7:30.
Oh, it's late for her, isn't it?
Well, I didn't let her watch any TV for like the past 3 days. So
Leading up to the meeting.
well, then when I said, hey, you get to go watch TV, that worked pretty well. So, like I said, Tim had to be on a meeting earlier too. So, but his doesn't go as long. All right, Dan is with us again. So we'll resume. We had gotten to the item on the agenda of the budget. And so, Natalie, I know that Brian talked to you and kind of prepared you to speak on this, correct?
Yeah, he did. So just to confirm, and I haven't sent you the Zoom link yet, but we are having a special budget meeting on August 24th at 1 o'clock. Brian left me some notes for you all to consider between now and then that we'll discuss at that meeting. So bear with me, I'm reading Brian's handwriting. So on the corporate side, I believe, some of the things that he wanted me to point out were section CA6. We're looking at, we have to buy or purchase a copy machine that he's budgeting in here between $6,000 and $8,000. He can speak more on that more specifically at that meeting, but that was something he wanted me to point out. Also in CA6, new office furniture. He has here that it's written currently in the tentative budget at $5,000. He did note that that will likely decrease because we have purchased some already. Some desks and some chairs, but there's still a few more items to get. So that item will most likely go down from 5,000. Another one was CA13, the Garage Art Studio. Specifically, he's budgeted $3,500 for second floor renovation, basically fixing some of the walls up there. CA21, board development. So I believe that this is also the same line as equity, and right now it's budgeted at $14,000. That's a conversation that we'll need to have at our ready meeting, or I'm sorry, at our special meeting earlier this week. We did discuss that we do want to budget money for continued equity work. I think we just have to decide what that is and how much that's going to cost. But right now it's listed in the tentative budget at 14,000 to reflect what last fiscal year also was, how much was budgeted in last fiscal year. CA 51, Garage Art Studio. Something else that needs to happen is a few new windows. Ruben and Marcos have put in some storm windows already in that building. I guess there's a few more right now. Oh, I'm sorry, and gutters. So right now he says he has that listed at $12,000. That's a point that he wants to discuss on the 24th as well. 908 Seward windows. He says there's 7 that also need repairs. He's budgeted $6,500. And the shed, so the shed at 908 Seward where we have the mural, we had power washed that wall and cleaned it up well so that they could do the art on that one side, but the rest of the building needs to be power washed and repainted. So there's budget in there for that at $5,000. And then moving into recreation, some of the notes that he has for R17, the Cayman West basketball court and the Ridgeville Park, the 2 court surfaces, we would like to resurface. He has that in there right now, budgeted between $21,000 and $22,000. I believe he had somebody come out and talk to him about an estimate of what that might cost, and it was it's going to be about $7,000 per court. And those, again, there's 3 courts that we're talking about. Budget areas.
Natalie, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm just trying to get clarity because in the detailed part of this, that's at 18,000. And I think you just said a different number. Plus you said 7 per times 3, which is 21.
Yeah, that'll need to be adjusted.
Okay. So it is 18 now and he's thinking it's more like 21.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that'll be something that will probably increase before we pass the final budget.
Okay.
And then he has a list also here for me, budget areas in need of adjustment. On the corporate side, he said CA6, office supplies and furniture, it's at $5,000 again, but that will likely decrease due to a year-end purchase. Sorry, my dog. Due to a year-end purchase for the 2019-2020 budget, we were able to purchase some of the furniture within that fiscal year. So the $5,000 will most likely not be necessary for this one. So that's an area where that number will go down. CA9 is attorney fees. He wants to have a conversation about that as well. That number may need to increase in this current fiscal year. CA21, board activities. This area could also change due to the equity number that may change. So it sounds to me like he's trying to get some clarification in board development and activities and the equity. Are those going to be the same things? Can we budget more for one than the other since one will be coming out of the equity number? But
which line item were you on just now?
He has CA21.
Okay. We talked about that when you first started going over the budget, and you mentioned the 14,000 for equity. Where is that specifically as part of the CA?
That's a good question. I'm not sure if he's...
Go to the line item details. Don't look at the summary page. Go to the line item details.
Yeah. So I think that...
Yeah, but it's not there. It just says, oh wait, I'm sorry. 14, okay. Yeah, so board development and conferences is the 3,000 that's getting added to the 14. And then IAPD membership is 1,000. And that's where we're getting 18.
Yeah, so the IAPD membership will not change.
Right.
But the 2 numbers in that line item that may change is the board development and activities and the equity number. Whether those, one may decrease and the other increases because it includes board activity, right? Or not, or they might stay the same. So that was just something that he highlighted here specifically that we should discuss at that 24th meeting.
Natalie, do you happen to know if in our previous budget, 2019-2020, did our 14,000 for equity, was it in this same location of CA21 board development activities?
Yes.
It was, okay. And obviously the bulk, well, I don't remember the exact breakdown of assessment cost versus training cost. you know, the manifestation of equity work in our next year will obviously be different than what we did this year, with some similarities maybe and some, you know, things that are very different. Jerry, is that reason enough to have it located in other areas of the budget? And if so, do any stick out to you in particular, or do you see it to be fine that all equity work stays in board development? It's just, it's not always going to be specifically board development, you know, community, you know, things that engage with the community. It could even be in programming if there's, you know, I mean, that all kind of will be decided, I think, partly by the committee and then by the board. But of course, we have to budget maybe before that's made clear.
Yeah, up to this point, it's been pretty focused into board development. Taking your point, there could come a point where you've got community outreach and programs that are different, and that would be something we'd have to consider at a future date, but we don't really have any logical place to do that at this point in time.
Well, I think that we should,
short of going straight into programming or going straight into what's the description of program promotion is kind of where we, you know, we used to have a communications director position at one point. Beyond that, we would have to expand our chart of accounts and probably involve a discussion with the auditors as to, you know, what would make sense as a place to put it, because there's no existing line item in our structure that makes sense for it other than the board development, possibly under programs, possibly under communications.
and possibly in multiple places, depending on what
The problem with going with programs and communications is you're moving it into the recreation fund,
Right.
and it's not really a recreation activity.
Right. That's
You
good.
know, and the monies in that fund are legally restricted to
That
very strongly. I mean, in general, everything we do is supposed to be recreation related, but especially when it gets into the recreation fund.
Natalie, I think, you know, we should probably, as the equity committee, try to get as much clarity from Pat Effiam, and I'm sure this was kind of already your intention, and it was mine as well, but get as much clarity as to her specific recommendations and the cost of each of them, and understanding exactly what those things are, ideally before our budget meeting, so that we can kind of be factoring that in.
Yeah, I've asked her for an estimate of that. I think the conversation that needs to be had based on her recommendations that I believe we agreed on, or the board agreed on at the meeting, was that we would be moving forward with equity work. And I know her biggest recommendation in terms of that is continuing to work with a consultant, whether it's her or somebody else. She did recommend that we do that in the next year. So I think if the board decides that they do want to do that, and I've already asked her for an estimate if we do move forward with Pat, what that would look like, and let her know that we need that relatively quickly so that we can budget accordingly for it. But I think that was the biggest, you know, aside from workshops and summits and the things that we might continue doing, I think that was probably the largest expense was going to be hiring a consultant to continue this work with.
Yeah, I would say too, just, you know, if I can ask the rest of the board for a second to consider, after everything that we've learned and everything that we've talked about, if there's anything that comes to mind for you as, you know, what you see making sense in the realm of how we spend equity dollars in this next budget, in the, you know, the budget that we're in, that we're also still finalizing. And I say that because even though, you know, Pat recommends, and I think we could probably all agree that we would need a consultant and need, you know, assistance in that form, in the realm of equity, at least for this year as well. Ultimately, the goal is that we, you know, start doing this work ourselves, you know, that we're being trained in terminology and, you know, everything else that flows from, you know, definitions. And so if anybody has any ideas, please, you know, at the budget meeting, I think is when we can kind of try to put what Pat Effiam gives us alongside anything additional from the board.
Can I say one thing about that?
Yeah.
You know, this has come up in conversation tonight surrounding the equity work and the committee. We obviously have a lot of questions about how that committee is going to function from this point forward. I know we still have to put together our equity mission statement. We have to figure out how and when we meet. There's a lot of things that I think the consultant will be really necessary for in terms of helping us understand productivity and at least get us off on the right footing. We've gone through the training now, and that's great. So at least in considering working with a consultant for the next fiscal year, I think it will at least be important for probably the first 6 months at the very least, for those considerations that you've all discussed already tonight.
Yeah.
Do you want me to keep going?
Yes, please.
Okay, so then for the recreation budget areas in need of adjustment, for recreation R23, partner camp numbers, also the camp supplies, they'll likely be reduced due to COVID. That's one of those things that's up in the air right now. We don't know if we're going to be running winter break camps or spring break camps. We don't know if we'll be able to run our June session next year of camp. So that's kind of a big question mark. Like I said earlier, I did buy a lot of supplies at the end of last fiscal year. So we have plenty of stuff moving into this year. So we may not need to purchase as much. We may need to purchase lots of new and different things. We just don't know. Also with the partner camp numbers, I'm working on that for you, Jerry, now, based on the partnerships that I already know are in existence for this fall, and most likely in the spring, assuming that we can do that. So
Yeah, the important thing here is to reserve your ability to spend the money when the time comes if you run it. If you cut it thinking you're not going to have it and then later change your mind, too late, you're stuck. You've got to preserve it. Just because you preserve it doesn't mean you have to spend it when the time comes. But it's better to go that route than the route of being too frugal about it and then later needing to spend it because you're stuck. You can't spend it later. You can't change this later.
For R49, the after school program, we did get confirmation from the city that they are going to run the after school program in the fall. So we will contribute to that in the same way that we have in the past. They will have a reduced number of children that can participate. And again, that's their program, their regulations. We're a partner and a host, so I'll keep you posted on how they move forward with that. But they did confirm that we will be offering that. So from a program perspective, I am reserving that space entirely for the city of Evanston. So whether it's for the meal program, the after school program, however we can assist and help at this time, I'm reserving that space from a program perspective, and we are reserving space within the budget to continue that support. For R31, a few areas may be reduced due to the lack of certain events and additions to gardening. We had a conversation, we had a meeting about the Youth Grow team discussing how we can continue to support it. So there might be some adjustments in there. And again, some of the events that we normally run are going to change potentially. So that's a point to discuss on the 24th as well. R34, he says there needs to be an adjustment in wage numbers due to July 2020 and some additions to program office needs. I don't have specifics on that, so we can talk to Brian more about it on the 24th. And then the last thing he has in here, the capital projects that have been in discussion and under consideration. The parking lot at 908 Seward is budgeted to be repaved at $38,000. He also has in here Reba replacement. I believe that means the play circuit. That's budgeted at $30,000. And then he also has in here the skate potential skate equipment for 908 Seward. He doesn't have a budgeted number for that because we've just begun having those conversations, but that is a consideration as well.
When you say he has those in there, are you talking about his notes, or are we supposed to see those things in this tentative budget?
Those are in his notes. I believe those are some of the capital improvement projects he would like to move forward within this fiscal year, but I think that's a discussion to be had at the 24th meeting. I don't know if I don't have I don't have it in front of me right now, so I'm not sure if it's on the tentative budget that you're looking at. But I believe there is a capital. Jerry, do you know, is there a capital improvements page?
He doesn't have detail in here, and I don't think he's got it in this. I think he was going more, well, there is a detail page, but he doesn't have any projects listed.
Okay. So those are the
But
projects.
he did do his 2-page document that had a 5-year projection of projects. And even there, I think some of the things you've listed aren't in the version that he gave us. But
Okay.
I would like to see him. This is a great start for having a 5-year plan for the capital improvement, and that's what it's all about. Is then, what can we move up from another year? What do we have on the radar that we want to push out a year to fit the numbers to get the budget to balance out with what we've got available to spend. So.
And so Martha, it sounds like these notes that he left me are just based on conversations that we've been having in board meetings and he's had with commissioners. So those are the three big things, the big ticket items that have been coming up are the parking lot repavement, the REBA replacement, play circuits, and skate equipment.
Okay. And speaking of skate equipment, I know that it sounds like a lot of folks are eager to take some next steps there. And Matt, I know you've been in contact with them, and it should probably be made very clear that the more we can get, actual numbers of what equipment would cost in time for our budget meeting, the better chance we have of kind of making that a reality within this budget, assuming that we resolve all those liability things.
And I think
Sure.
that's one of the areas where he's been talking to the insurance folks. They have sources that they said that they would refer him to get some of the pricing.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Matt,
That's what I was going to say. I talked to Brian yesterday about it, and he said that he thought he had some specific referrals from the insurance company. Should
Okay.
be good.
I also, sorry, go ahead.
Not just good in terms of the liability. If you're getting the recommendation from your insurer, you'd assume that they're going to insure it.
Right. I would say, just to follow up a little bit on what the discussion was tonight about the skate park, is that in a perfect world, I would love to see us have beefed up equipment that isn't necessarily permanent. I don't know if that exists. I mean, it sounded like there was talk of DIY stuff and how that might, even be even more of a liability consideration than a permanent skate park, because of the fact that equipment isn't designed to last forever and stay safe forever and that kind of stuff. So I get that the DIY approach is not sustainable, but there may be people who take issue with that space being permanently dedicated to a skate park. And it seems like a nice theoretical middle ground that there would be equipment that's more robust, more towards permanent, but not necessarily permanently occupying that space. So I'm not a skater. I don't know if that exists, but I think that that's something that we should consider, because it might make multiple groups of people happy at the same time and achieve the same result. But I don't know. Again, I don't even know if logistically if that's possible. Yeah, Natalie?
I just wanted to say, I think part of and I don't know if he got this from the insurance company or not, I'm assuming he did, but this idea of having some kind of equipment that can be left out and removed. We didn't have camps this summer. Like normally in the summertime, that space is being used all day by hundreds of campers. So in the absence of those children, it's been open, and especially with COVID, and people have really, taken to being outside, and I think that's excellent. I think part of that consideration also is I think is just also in consideration that we didn't have the hundreds of kids at Ridgeville all day, every day, like we normally do.
Right, and maybe that's why there was, it sort of appeared to those people who were like, we'd love to skate there. It appeared like, well, it looks like we can, because that space isn't being used right now. I'm kind of curious, though, because Matt Mitchell said to me, and so, I take this to be his observation, and I would love to know from you, Natalie, and from Brian, who isn't here, if this is in fact true, and if so, why? Those were both basketball courts, and Matt told me that that westernmost court, they're right next to each other, right? But one's east, one's west. That western court, doesn't even have basketball posts, let alone any hoops, that's just not part of the equipment on that side of the court. First of all, is that correct? And second of all, why is it that way?
That is correct. And I have, I don't remember exactly why. I don't know if there were ever hoops there. At least there haven't been in quite a long time. So
I don't remember any hoops there.
yeah, I don't know that there ever were. That space, there's lots of like games painted on the pavement that we use in the summertime, like Foursquare, other things, hopscotch, that kind of stuff that the kids use for camps. But I don't know that there's ever been, hoops on that end.
And I mean, just another idea, and again, I'm not a skater, so I don't know if anyone honestly in this room at the moment is an active skater or a previous skater, but is there a way to dedicate sort of what essentially amounts to half court real estate, so to speak, to a skate park, and then reserving half of that non-operational basketball court to be still for Foursquare or whatever else it's being used for? I know I see sometimes people teaching their kids how to ride a bike on that kind of open space. So, you know, rather than not do it at all, I'd love to see us do it in whatever capacity we can. And if that means half of a full court instead of the full court, again, if it does need to be permanently installed, I could see a good argument for it not taking up the whole court such that only people on skateboards or other wheels are able to use that. You know, we always have to think of multiple purposes at once, multiple groups, multiple interests. But at the same time, if you just only, you know, want to accommodate everybody at the same time, we can't like make decisions and move forward in ways that dedicate the space to cool things like this. So that's, you know, one of my concerns. Matt, I see you, but I saw Debbie's hand first.
I think we need to discuss, I mean, hopefully we'll be back in session with camps and stuff. And if that area is used during the day by camps, I think that's huge. I don't think we can say, well, we'll have a skate park there. And then, I mean, Natalie's saying that that area is really used. And I would hope that we're going to be back in normal session next year, if not before. So
right. I totally agree.
I think we really need to listen to that.
Natalie.
I do think there are creative ways to do both. I'm always trying to find ways to, work together and find compromise in those kinds of things. And I think there are probably creative ways that we could. And I think that, again, is probably likely the suggestion that came from Brian about, is there equipment that can be removed, or can we also include in that space painting of the same game so that it can be used for both things, you know. But I think we can come up with something creative, I hope.
Yeah, and I mean, to Debbie's point, and sorry, Matt, I just wanted to kind of let people have a chance to respond to what she said. But to Debbie's point, I mean, absolutely, if that space is already normally used under normal conditions, we do have to consider that. My next question would be, you know, exactly how is it being used, by what camps, during what times, figuring out what that usage looks like, because then that's something we can analyze. Okay, can we make it work? Multiple usages of the space multiple times too, because if we dedicated just half the court, for instance, there could be a skate camp, like somebody said tonight earlier, that programming could actually, you know, if you find somebody who can kind of teach a clinic or camps or whatever about skateboarding, you know, that brings in revenue, that attracts people who historically probably, if that's their main interest, haven't been using our space. And so additional usage and additional revenue is a good thing, but we wouldn't want to infringe on existing usage or existing revenue either. So I think that boils down to what you said, Natalie, which is finding ways to make it work, multiple things at once, if at all possible.
It's the summertime that I think is the hardest time to share space, right? For all of our parks and all of our programs. Like, between August and June 1st, it'd be a great skate park. You know what I mean? I think that there's a way to find compromise and find a solution to that.
Yeah. And Matt?
I kind of agree with what Natalie's saying. I think we should prioritize multi-use shared space. I could see, even with permanent structures, that you would be able to do other things besides skating and biking there. if you know, for just summer camp, skate park can be closed during camp hours, and kids can use the space.
Speaking of basketball courts and the fact that westernmost court at Ridgeville isn't even a basketball court and nobody can even remember when it was active as one, are there 2 courts at the area of basketball courts that's right on Asbury? So I always confuse Cayman West, Cayman East. The one there's just one. Okay. And that's, of course, a full court, right? For some reason,
a lot of times the groups will split the court, right? So you'll have a group playing a half-court game, another group playing another half-court game. I mean, sometimes they occupy all of the, or they will play at Ridgeville and Cayman and like rotate and play different games with each other. So
I guess I have an idea. I mean, I know this isn't the time for discussing the skate park, but it's popped into my head. I'm going to say it right now anyway. It's like I never want to take basketball away or take away any usage that's being used. But if what we're looking at is the square footage of that could be 3 courts, but only 2 of them are basketball courts right now. That one along Asbury, the easternmost one at Ridgeville, but not that 3rd one because there's just no hoops there. You know, if somehow that space at Ridgeville could be full basketball courts, 2 side by side, and then the one on Asbury becomes the skate park, then we're not taking away any green space. We're using already paved space. We're not taking away any basketball because we're just changing the location of one court so that it's still 2 full courts and aligning them where the camps are the heaviest, because camp usage is really heavy at Ridgeville versus that area along Asbury where there's a court. That's not, correct me if I'm wrong, that's not a primary spot for camp on that court, right?
no, I think it's also a noise issue. I think by putting 2 courts next to each other creates, it just creates more sound. And I think the court that is at Cayman West is also very heavily utilized by people that live in that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure that they would love taking it
go farther away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think we want to go there right now.
Yeah, like I said, I'm just saying something that popped into my head, trying to kind of please multiple groups at once. So where were we at?
That was all I had. That was all the notes from Brian.
Okay. Speaking of the benches, I meant to ask this earlier. Are we, where are we at with the muralist doing the benches? Is she in a position?
Yeah, so Ruben, we just redid all 10 benches at Ridgeville. So he pulled off all the old wood, put on new backs and seats. He did it extremely fast. I don't know how, but anyway, tomorrow he's priming them. And then Sherry is getting me a color palette so that we can buy paint. So there's 10 benches. We'll probably pick 4 or 5 colors. So they're all different colors that match the mural. And then once that's finished, then she's going to come out and do her artwork on each bench.
Great. That's exciting. That mural is so cool. Okay, so thank you so much, Natalie, for delivering Brian's notes. And does anyone, Natalie, you probably said this. I just wanted to see if I could get this pointed out a little bit clearly, or maybe I missed it. Like I said, the thing about the Youth Grow team and where the wages are with that. Can you point us to that and just talk about that one more time?
Yeah, he has that. So just to, I guess, kind of catch everybody up on the Youth Grow team. So because it began at the end of a fiscal year, we had to get a little creative with like how we were going to do it because we hadn't budgeted for it. And then the city agreed to partner with us. So the wages of the Youth Grow team staff, the kids, is paid by the city of Evanston. The wage that we pay is to Catherine Egan. So because her job is partly programming, it's partly maintenance, we were able to get her on payroll this year. But moving into this next fiscal year, we want to make sure that her wages are accounted for in a specific area, and I think R31 is where we intend to include Catherine's wages. So he doesn't have any specific notes about that. He just wrote it down here as a point to discuss on the 24th. And he and I have been doing some math to figure out, how many hours does this program actually take, her compensation, things like that. So also it's one of those weird programs that begins at the end of one fiscal year and then continues through the beginning of a second one. So there's considerations to take there as well. So he and I are working on that, and we'll have more detail for it for you on August 24th.
Okay, and then under our RA 31, there's regular, seasonal, fall, spring, summer, there's events, stuff like that. Which one of those line items corresponds to what would be Catherine?
None of them. Yeah.
None of them. So it's not even in the 59,000.
Unless it's, and again, I don't have it in front of me. So I believe that R31 covers special program wages. Is that correct? I don't.
It just says
R32, I believe. Okay. So then we'll have to ask Brian. I'm not sure exactly if he wants to add a line item to that for her, or if he wants to, or if he believes she fits into one of the other ones there. But it seems to me that is where he intends to.
It's not so much which line you get an entry added, as long as you get it into the right fund. That's the main point.
Right. I guess I was just wondering if it was even in there at all, and if so, which of those line items it was. And then also, now that I'm looking at it, it's regular 1,000 hours at $10 an hour, seasonal 800 hours at $10 an hour. I'd love to have a bit more detail about what exactly that is.
Hold on, I have this actually. Okay, so RA 31 part-time wages. She is a seasonal. She would be considered a seasonal employee. So the maintenance, 1,000 hours at $10 an hour. That's when we hire in a part-time assistants for Marcos and Ruben. Seasonal, I believe, is summertime or wintertime when we have the skate rink open. The recreational programs for fall and spring, I believe that's talking about instructors, our Studio 908 instructors. So my guess is Catherine would fall into one of those categories.
Prior to last year, remember we compressed a lot of accounts down?
Mm-hmm.
Prior to doing that, we had a part-time maintenance. We had a part-time recreational programs. We had a part-time special events. We had a part-time farmer's market. We just lumped them all together now as part-time wages, because that's what the auditors did when they did the audit anyway, was lump them all together. And then we break out the detail on the detail worksheet pages of Brian's worksheet here, so he can still keep track of it. It's not critically important if money gets moved from one category to, if somebody's, because we have people that will work special events, but then they'll come back and they'll work programs. And that was part of the problem when we had so many categories, is all of their hours would get logged in one spot because they wouldn't take the time to fill out 2 different time cards in the 2 different areas where they were working. So what seemed like a fine idea at one point in time way in the past, in practice was just a muddle. So just combining all the part-time wages into one group is what we're doing now to match what's in the audit. Frankly, I think a lot of the program wages may be part-time people as well. So some of the distinction between program wages and part-time wages is a bit arbitrary, but it's a distinction that the auditors made in the audit, and it may have been truer at one point in time. I think program wages was intended to be full-time people only, but I don't think that that's been kept pure and clean over the years. And so there could be some discussion that it makes sense to combine those 2 categories even further, or to have an explicit full-time, part-time breakout. But then again, we have people who in the middle of a season switch from one classification to another, and it creates more administrative work that just never happens. So
That's something that
I
Brian.
kind of just reemphasize, don't worry about which specific category we get into. It's just as long as it's supposed to be in the recreation fund, that's really all that counts.
What were you going to say, Natalie?
I was just going to say that that's something that Brian and I discussed when he asked me to look through the recreation budget, and that was a question that I had as well, because some of these like very specific line items I'm not sure are relevant anymore. Like for example, the special events, the Halloween, that is the Fall Frenzy this year. We're not doing two separate events. Like the holiday camps, that covers the wages for the director and the counselors that come in. Concerts, that's like if I hire Wes to come and help out. You know what I mean? Like there's some like really detailed specification in here that I'm not sure is totally necessary. But exactly what Jerry just said, which is what Brian explained to me, is that as long as it's coming out of the recreation account, that's the most important thing. So I think cleaning up that.
For the purposes of the ordinance, the only number that will get there is the total of RA 31. The additional detail are just essentially Brian's working notes. If he says he needs $59,000 for wages, how did he get his $59,000? That's his work. That's kind of his scratch pad to support how he got to $59,000.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I'm actually kind of looking at it from a different perspective, though. I'm not trying to understand the detail for the purpose of the ordinance. I'm fine with that. What I'm thinking is with regard to something like Catherine's position at Ridgeville and the fact that we're talking about expanding that and we're talking about making sure we can pay her what it is that she's asking for and that we can accomplish the things that she's going to help us do. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, part of the way we do that is we look at these numbers that we're already committed to pay in these ways and we say, well, wait, what exactly is that? Why are we doing that much? For example, just like you said, Natalie, that Halloween event and Fall Frenzy is, I think, basically from now on supposed to be a consolidated event unless something changes. Does that mean that the $500 for Halloween and the $1,000 for Fall Frenzy is now $1,500 for one event? Or does it mean that we can kind of like shave some of the cost of that event? I'm
Right.
just trying to think about, accommodating Catherine and making sure that we can make that happen. And if part of the way that we do that is looking closer at what it is that we've already budgeted for. Does that make sense? I mean, I'm just.
Yeah, it does, Martha. And yes. And when I talked to him specifically about that exact same thing, it's like, these are all R31, right? So like, even if because I'm probably not going to hire anybody to help me with Fall Frenzy this year. So like, that money's just not going to get spent. She's going to be, her wages are going to come out of RA 31. And so it doesn't really matter. The $15,000 for fall and spring instructors, I don't have as many classes running this fall because I can't. So there's going to be room there, but the point is to budget that money to cover, like Jerry said earlier, it's better to have it than to not have it. So that fall 15,000, some of that will go to Catherine. So as long as I do the math and I figure out what we need to pay Catherine for this entire fiscal year and it makes sense in RA 31, that's what I was told to worry about. So that's what I'm working on right now in terms of like the math and figuring out her wage, is to make sure that we can cover it regardless if it's like if it's actually that Halloween line or the concerts line or whatever. It's just making sure that the $59,000 includes what I need to pay to Catherine in this fiscal year.
Right. And it sounds like it does not right now. Right? Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, you got at your direction, you and Brian, I just want to figure out at our budget meeting, like where that is going to come from.
I had the same question.
Yeah.
So I get it. And I'm the same way. I want to look at it and see the numbers and the verbiage used reflecting to how we're spending the money. But Brian manages that, and like we're on the same page about it. So
okay.
Ultimately, everything there ties back to the cumulative paid hours to all the employees that work for the district. So it's just where, take each employee and which category do they fit in and how many hours are you going to pay them this year?
Yeah, and in terms of how we're looking at that, Jerry, like you said previously, that we have part-time wages as a category, then we have program wages as a category. And then we have maintenance wages, but maintenance wages are also in part-time wages. It's sort of like, I don't know if maybe we should analyze like the best way to present all wages and which categories they should be broken down into. For instance, it just sticks out to me that the two line items at the top of part-time wages that are maintenance, why isn't that down with maintenance? Why is it in part-time wages? You know, but
May I suggest we leave this for the next meeting? We're drilling down too deep right now. I think, can we move this to?
Great, especially without Brian here.
Exactly. Exactly.
Agree.
all right, so that I think covers the tentative budget then. If Natalie, if you're feeling like that's, I think you said that was it from you and Brian, that is. There's nothing in new business on our agenda.
I'll make a motion to adjourn then.
Well, we do have call of the commissioners on our agenda. So we'll go in alphabetical order as we usually do. Commissioner Braun.
Sorry, nothing.
Okay. Commissioner Coyne.
Just briefly, want to thank Brian and Natalie and our crew for accommodating our REBA group that will be at Elks Park on Thursday from, I believe, 7 to 8. Very much appreciate that. Thank you.
I guess I'm next, and I don't have anything to say at the moment. So that would be to Commissioner McCourt next.
Nothing.
Okay, Commissioner Mitchell.
I had the great opportunity to take a tour of the garden with Catherine Egan and meet some of the city folks. Nathan and Audrey run the Mayor Youth Summer Employment Program. Yeah, it was real inspiring. I really love the work that they're doing. So that's it. Thanks.
Okay, and then we would have citizen comments, but I don't think there's anybody here, at least not that I see. Okay, so I will entertain a move to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it if I'm unmuted. Yeah.
Yeah, we hear you. Thank you, Debbie. And so, Julie, if you'll roll call the vote to adjourn, please.
Braun,
Yes.
Coyne,
Yes.
Beans,
Yes.
McCourt. McCourt,
Yes, sorry.
that's fine. And Mitchell.
Yes.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.
You too.
Thanks.